This is Summoning Insight. We have just won our 10th League of Legends podcast world championship. We just win every year, because right aware. And spoiler, like, we don't even, I mean, the joke is we do give out the Dade award, but nobody on our shows would receive the Dade. Well, maybe Loco back in the day, you know, he was very hyped. And then sometimes you would say, his performance wasn't always up to par, was it? But who knows? Then again, do you know what? Even though obviously I won't reveal any details, I'm classy Monty. I actually did meet up with Locodoco recently. And this is where I'm so legit when I say what I'm about to say. In theory, I shouldn't do this, right? Like if I was on E-League or something, they'd go, what are you doing? Say that. So all you need to know is this, right? I was talking to Locodoco. I just want everyone to know that he's not only okay, he's the same idiot he always was. So you ready for how you can understand that he is the same person? The same person where before you meet him and for the first 5 minutes, you're like, I love this guy. This guy's the best. And then 10 minutes in, you go, he's pretty good, but it's a bit annoying, isn't it? And then about 20 minutes in, you go, you know what, Loco? See you in another 10 years, man. Because he actually, by the way, guys, asked me a bunch of questions when he was asking, what am I doing? How do we fund the company? He was asking me a bunch of questions like, don't you feel a bit, doesn't it feel a bit wrong, though? And dystopian, like to have a gambling sponsor, gambling, like think about what the effect would be on people and stuff. And what about kids, all the usual NPC comments, right? Even though they've never thought it through and all the other implications of other companies in life and esports, right? So anyway, but here's all I need to tell people. Here's the punchline. I asked Loco what he's doing. He works for an NFT platform, right? Which is like, it's like, mate, are you even kidding me right now? But you have to understand, and here's the thing, here's the actual double punchline. By the way, he never made any connection between that topic. I didn't even have the heart to do it, Monty. I just said, you know what, so let this one go. Again, like I said, you know what, see it. Nice catching up. See
Regulated gambling, truly, that is.
I know, the best in it.
He hasn't figured out that crypto's just unregulated gambling yet.
Well, that's the best part. Is like on the one he does, by the way, they're all by definition just complete. Like who even knows who they are? Can you trust any of them? I mean, it's just mental in it. It's just actually. That's all great. I'm going to say is he was involved with TSM guys, and now where's TSM gone? Spoiler. Well. Nowadays, that's the trend. At least TSM had the good decency money to just sell their team, then leave. Like nowadays, teams just go, you know what? I'm not coming. John, is John there? Yeah, I'm not coming to work. I've got a bit of a cold. You don't see how on Monday? No, I'm not coming in either. Like, and then everyone's such a zombie. They're all just like, well, you know what? Doesn't look like anything to me. So 8 teams it is, then, and everyone's just going on with life. Like, oh, all right. So I'm just saying, like. This isn't like the end of the world when, like, before we had literally a walkout over like NASL jumps, but it's not the end of the world that like literally 20% of the league's gone. Nah, it's fine, Thorin. We're all just continuing on. And then there's all the people in the scene like, I think it's a good thing that the 2 teams have just left with no explanation, and now all the players have got no jobs. And I'm like, how is this haunting? By the way, like, but anyway, the key thing is, not only do we bring you fresh entertainment and or jokes and anecdotes about Locodoco's life and stupidity still being the same, also, we are sponsored by a classic sponsor of this show, HelloFresh. No, actually, it's not HelloFresh. Sorry. No, by the way, we actually
HelloFresh is so great
as well. That was our last episode, yeah. Sorry, Liquid IV is the one I wanted to bring up here. By the way, I'm actually having some Liquid IV right now. This is a classic thing. I like to have it after workout is the obvious one, isn't it? You need to replenish. But I actually think in the morning's the best time as well, because if people don't realise, obviously overnight you're not consuming anything, are you? So it's going to be when you're most depleted, when you're going to need the nutrients, you need the refreshment. Also, one of the things I think is actually best about this product is I actually find the selection of flavors is all over the place. So you will almost certainly be able to find one that you actually find really nice. Because essentially the trick with this product is because it's got lots of electrolytes in. Electrolytes naturally, they're going to be quite salty. So normally you wouldn't like, that's why actually, obviously people take pills in a different scenario. This is all just mixed together. And then they pick flavors, which if you look at the type of flavor they choose, is to sort of like make it not too salty. It's like a way to, if you notice, none of them are like super sweet, Monty. They're not like overtly sweet.
No.
It's more like they just sort of like shade out the bitterness of the salt. So I actually find them quite refreshing as well. Like I find after you do a workout, it's kind of like an interesting flavor mix even to hit you with. It's definitely different than any of the sort of drink, like any energy drink on the market there. And also, crucially, they have all different flat types. So they have the sugar-free one if you do keto or something like that. And they actually have one where it's simultaneously liquid IV to replenish, and also you get energy as caffeine in. So they've got all different types. If you want to support us, and it is available, like you live in America, for example, use the code LFN for 20% off.
That's right. And
check out or whatever.
Yeah, and the sugar-free one has been great. It's something my wife really enjoys. Like I said, I usually have the sugar ones because I take it during a workout. And the sugar does actually, they've done scientific studies about dehydration. It does actually help kind of get it gets the liquid into you faster to have a little bit of sugar in there. And it does feel nice, I will say, if you're a little hungover. I went out while some of the other casters from League of Legends were here for the World Championship. I had a few. Had a liquid IV the next morning. It definitely helps revive you in that scenario. So you can get your liquid IV hydration multiplier sugar-free or with caffeine or however you like it in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code LFN at checkout. And if you guys have been on the fence about this, now is a great time to go do it. This is the last time that for this campaign with Liquid IV. We really like them as a sponsor and would like them to come back. So if you've been waffling, think about doing it now. Think about going over to the website and getting it now. That would be very helpful for us. As usual, supporting our sponsors is one of the best. We've got a lot of new sponsors coming in the pipeline that you guys are going to see shortly. So LFN been doing well, and especially thanks to people and companies like Liquid IV, who we genuinely very much like. So thanks a lot. Now, Thorin, I don't even know where to start this week. There's tons of crazy roster rumors. We have a World Finals that was very boring, but Faker wins his 4th title, so there's a ton to talk about in the history there.
I think we bumped the final because, like you say, we can talk about that anytime in the episode. Like that one, I don't think it's not one of those ones where we have to dive into the particulars of the game.
I mean, let's be honest. They're really here to hear us flame EG. That's why they're here. That's why the people are here. By the way, Rekkles is now a Korean support player.
True. Although I will say that one, like I'll just tell everyone the 5-second version of that one. Spoiler, it's not actually LCK, so you never would watch that team play anyway. So like that is fake hype, that whole one. Because what you're actually all doing there, by the way, is you're all acting like what we've always dreamed of, Monty, which is like Bjergsen goes to the LCK or like Froggen goes to the LPL. But that was to play for an actual team there. This is just a challenger team. No one gives a shit. So like that one is fake hype. But
I will say that the casters of LCK also cast challengers now for Korea. So you will be able to watch English language broadcasts, most likely, of Rekkles playing, which is interesting. So here's the thing. You can find it. You can find it out there.
I said it as a joke at the beginning, but like if this was like a 4 Horsemen episode, by the way, this topic definitely deserves one, if anything ever did in bloody League of Legends. Like I say, dude, this just shows you how crazy like games are where people, I forget what the famous quote is, Monty, but it's like a famous quote that basically says something like essentially the gist is like it's impossible to convince someone of something when their salary depends upon them not understanding the point you're making, right? It's like a classic, like turn of the century quote or something like Victorian era or something. And basically this topic highlights that perfectly because, as I said, there's 2 approaches to this whole LCS topic that I can't even conceive of, like actually going around being passed off as if they were like, that's a valid take. So one is the one I just said, that this is actually a good thing. By the way, not like what that conflates the fake topic, which is an awesome discussion, which would be this. What if actually as a league movement, Monty, they chose to reduce down to 8, and in doing so, they made it so they concentrate the talent. That would be totally different from what was done here, which is one day before the fucking free agency starts, which, by the way, if you understand anything about the history of League of Legends off seasons, means the day free agency ends, right? If you know that, as opposed to the worst possible execution execution of that idea of condensing from 10 to 8, essentially, which is actually, by the way, I always use this analogy, but this is perfect. It is literally musical chairs. When the music stops, which is the first day of free agency, spoiler, if you were on the two teams that don't have chairs anymore, you don't have chairs anymore. Even though what's sick about it is, EG had apparently like a budget roster anyway. And if you look, Kelsey's tweet implies they were building another budget roster. But Golden Guardians actually was supposed to be one of the best teams in NA. Am I the only one tripping here? That were not only is that team gone, by the way, the whole org's gone. We were all praising them for the last year or so about what. First of all the past lineups they made, like the ones that became 100 Thieves, and then now we were all praising them for that lineup in the spring that made the finals, looked good, went to MSI for like 10 minutes, was doing all right in that game against BLG or whatever. Like, how are we going to all then, Monty, go and just look and then go, that's just fine, actually. Yeah, I think we can all continue on as though nothing's a problem here. Like, so, this is like, in this scenario, two people just went overboard on the Titanic, mate. Like, it's time to start panicking, isn't it? What? If not panicking now, when are we panicking? That's what I want to know.
So there's so much to discuss here. And just to be clear, for those of you guys who don't know the context of what we're talking about, the LCS has, in fact, decided to basically buy out two of the teams. And yes, there was a settlement. John Needham wouldn't disclose the amount of money that changed hands, but we just got finished with the we just got finished with the Overwatch League buying out teams for $6 million in order to shut things down. What happened was, apparently, by all accounts, the sequence of events was a couple of weeks ago, very suddenly. Obviously, EG was, and Richard has reported on this, was rumored to be selling to Luminosity, which is a Canadian-based esports organization, has had a variety of top-tier rosters, most notably the Brazilian roster that was winning Counter-Strike majors several years ago. They were the ones.
Ninja, obviously.
Ninja, yeah. Back when he was in his earlier days of streaming. But they've never been an org with the most amount of money, but they have been pretty good at identifying talent overall. And so they were rumored to be attempting to purchase EG slots. Now, apparently that fell through for whatever reason, possibly due to monetary reasons. We don't know how much EG was trying to get out of Luminosity for this slot or how much Luminosity thought it was actually worth, but that deal didn't end up manifesting. At the same time, Golden Guardians apparently told Riot that they wanted to get out of League of Legends and they were going to shut down their esports team in order to focus on basketball, which is obviously just bullshit. It means they're tired of losing money in esports, which
the fucking dog eat their homework as well. That's such a dog shit excuse. That's so bad, isn't it? Mate, one day before free, sorry, I need to just focus on Checknote's basketball. Shut the fuck. And also, so, by the way, that makes it sound like there's one bloke in an office like, hey, I'm a bit busy with basketball right now.
Exactly.
There's two patterns on in the background. Fucking hell, that's like, I've got to get Clay Thompson's contract on. It's not even the same guy. It's some totally unrelated people.
No, yeah, it really took probably none of their time to focus on this because
what they need to stop wasting money that isn't to do with basketball money.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
said that. I agree with their statement. That does make perfect sense. I agree.
They needed to stop losing money. And the same deal, whatever the deal was that they won't announce, because obviously if you hear the number, you will start freaking out. And we know the number was low. And the reason we know that is because none of the other teams, including teams that have been actively trying to sell, such as Immortals and Dignitas, didn't take the deal, which means that they believe, that the remaining teams believe, that they can basically, at bare minimum, kind of sit there and run rosters that break even or make a small amount of profit off of the $2+ million of revenue sharing that the teams get within the LCS. And they're fine with that because they'd rather just not sell at a loss, right? Because it almost certainly was less than the 10 million that Riot charged.
Here's the thing, unless you think logically, this is a fact I want people to really understand what I'm saying right now. Unless you think the teams are going to nothing, then you should never sell. It doesn't make sense to, as long as you have the liquidity to keep your company going. Because basically, think about the implication. The implication, if you really believe in the future of the LCS, is you can turn this around, and as economic factors go on an uptick and the VC comes back to the scene, theoretically, then this would be where you could put money in again, and then your slot might be worth 20, 30, 40 million, like the original dream of where it was before. So in that scenario, like that, in theory, it's a good sign that people want to stay in the industry. But like obviously, that is the question people are going to have to ask themselves, Monty, because the point is, if in a year someone else has like liquidity issues or something going on with the ownership, then if it also is the point that like you're not there financially, then people are going to sell, like even if it's for ridiculous figures like this, because the point is, yeah, it sounds shit to sell for like 10 million or whatever TSM's claim was, but 10 million is better than 1 million, you know. So eventually it's going to get, if you get into a hard enough scenario, you have to ask yourself that question, right? It's like, essentially, like, you don't want to feel like the gambler who leaves with fuck all, but it's better than leaving with nothing. So I find this whole topic so disturbing, mate, the idea that like they just leave one day before. By the way, quickly, in case people don't understand, I'll just make this explicit. The point I'm making there is that John Needham is literally using the notion that because this news came out officially one day before the free agency begins, he's using the English language to actually miscommunicate, except he's not. He wants you to take from what he just said, because think about it, the news comes out a day before free agency to allow people a chance to get other teams. The implication directly there is that free agency hasn't started, so don't worry, no one's out of a job, and since they're available and it's free agency beginning, they could join one of the other teams. Here's the problem with that. Everyone who's behind the scenes knows, and it's been open secret for years, but let's just be real, everyone knows now that almost every spot on rosters is already decided. At this point, if anything, it's just the teams themselves choosing, like, between this guy or that guy, and it'll usually be like a rookie or some gamble pick. The ones that are real players are already signed. That's why some people already are out of a job. So if you're actually a player on those rosters, I'll bet most of them aren't having jobs at this point, so I don't care how good they are. And then also, this guy has tried to make it sound in that scenario like, oh, but we've rushed it through, so we get like brownie points because we've given them a chance. It's like, you haven't at all. In fact, by the way, as a quick aside, this is how you know NA, it doesn't really think they're actually ever getting the trophies of the world, because they don't even wait until the bloody World Championship's over before they start signing the players. So like, at that point, like, if people don't know, it used to be players that poached themselves during the group stage of Worlds. Now the Hawks, you just hear the stories, you know the money, like, you just hear the stories starting up of like, they've already got 3 out of their 5 sorted, and they're probably going to get this guy, and you're like, we've just got like quarterfinal 1 coming up. What are we doing here? But that's just the scene we're in now. So the idea that he's playing on their Monty of like, because it's officially free agency, as I said, to make it explicit, you can talk to players. You can ask their team. Obviously, the teams themselves who have a player can talk to them already. They have that player themselves. And so what you do is you just set it all up. So everyone gives a bunch of verbal agreements. And then basically you just wait. And then the point is, the day one of free agency, actually just signing dates, when everyone just comes out and goes, and then it just goes like, right, Cloud9 signs this guy, and then, oh, this guy did join TSM when they used to exist. So that whole topic, like, the reason I bring this up at the beginning, Monty, is this is the first communication from Riot about this topic, that the league's losing 20% of their teams. And the guy has to immediately, like I say, he didn't actually miscommunicate, Monty. He intentionally, like, discommunicated, essentially. Like, he didn't actually want to communicate information. He wanted to give you the wrong perception about what's going on, so that Riot seems like they did an awesome job on this. Whereas, like, I understand Riot might have been blindsided, but they've absolutely dropped the ball on this. Like, they fucked those 10 players completely up the arse. Like, whoever was planning on joining those teams. And the worst thing is, like I say, they're on different ends of the spectrum. EG, yeah, it's a budget roster. I get that. That guy getting fucked over, probably at the bottom of the pecking order. Some of the players on Golden Guardians are some of the best in the LCS, mate. Like, this is no joke that they're going to potentially just sit on the bench for no reason, by the way. No reason at all. Like, they just didn't know that their team that they were signed for doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and all the teams do make, you know, they do make moves based around what is happening. And as you say, Thorin, a lot of the teams, the kind of the meta that happens around free agency now is that most teams give players permission to talk to other teams during this period. And they try, because teams want to talk to other players themselves, so they allow these conversations to occur. And so there can't be any hard agreements, like there can't be any signed pages, like signed contracts up until today, but the more or less things are already sorted out by this point in time. Now, it is a bit different in the eastern regions because, as you guys will notice, there's been a lot of announcements about releases of Korean players, because basically now is the opening of the free agency. And one of the things, we'll talk about some Korean rosters later on, but one of the things that's advantageous about me being in Korea again is that now I hear a lot of what's going on behind the scenes in Korea. And I can just tell you guys that it's different here because there are a lot of these players are not signed currently, and they are actually testing free agency, and there are a lot of conversations that are still ongoing. So we knew there was going to be a big
shakeup a few
shakeup.
days ago, Monty. So like I implied, like it's actually mad that the off season is just essentially done in the West already. Like
Well, it's because there's no teams left, right?
Team finished. No, but that's so silly, though, isn't it? Like I say, like it just shows that we're not even at the same table as them. Like we can just sort all our rosters while they're still playing the game. But give me a fucking break. How bad do you want us all to look in the West, guys? Why would we look like such clowns? It's mental, isn't it? I know.
Yeah, and
like
you know,
literally, you could. It wasn't that great a final, Monty, but we're supposed to believe the most epic game that could change the whole history of League of Legends is going on. Well, oh my God, Keria moves, Crisp comes in. All of a sudden, wow, will Light get to him, and will he start to kite back? At the same time that's going on, literally, Mad Lions is like, is Pedro here or is Pablo coming in for his tryout now? Like, upset, who the fuck's that? Like, that's literally like the state of where. And then meanwhile, EG is actually like taking down all the stuff from their office, which now literally they're going to leave, and it's going to be, Monty, like a scene from a 90s Hollywood movie where some company, some guy will go, hey, come on in here. No, they're in here, officer. I swear there was an office here when I was here last week. I swear, but it'll all just be empty, like it's like just a set from Hollywood or something, all like boxes and shit. But they'll be like, book him down. This is obviously a made-up company. Evil Geniuses. What's a video game company? So, mate, the whole West just looks like a joke off this shit. What the fuck?
Yeah. But you know, of course, we can't know what's going on.
It does look, by the way, like it's going to be the wildest offseason ever in fucking LCK history, though, Monty. Because if you look at the releases, it's implied most teams, they're going to sign different players, like 3 to 4, 2 to 3 minimum per team, it looks like.
I mean, I think it's obvious that Genji's going to try and keep Chovy, but the reason why we can't have known, and like players themselves can't have known what was going on in Korea, is because obviously when T1 wins, right, they haven't actually had any of the players. They have 3 players, Keria, Gumayusi, and Zeus, that are currently free agent. Only Owner and Faker are currently contracted. And so what this means is the entire scene kind of hinges on where those players decide to go, and they might re-sign with T1, but nobody is going to sign a contract with a different team, because if there's a chance that Keria goes somewhere else and you want to be the support of T1, like you would like to have the opportunity to play on that team, obviously. So that's why the dominoes actually literally couldn't start falling before today when the free agency period was up, because there are too many players in demand who are either coming off their T1 contracts or wanting to be on T1 contracts in the future, right? So I have heard that. So first off, Viper has already re-signed with Hanwha. That announcement was already made. And from what I understand, Hanwha and D+ are actually trying to throw around quite a bit of money this offseason. So I think if you're fans of those two teams, you can probably anticipate that they're going to have some pretty decent rosters.
I mean, the rumors so far of the Hanwha Life one sounded interesting. Like essentially, like it would be that they would get fucking what's his name, and that he would. I think that was that Delight would go to that team,
yep.
and that Peanut or something. It sounded like a Gen G sort of reboot. Yeah, so that sounded interesting.
The rumors are that it'd be Viper, Delight, Zeka, Peanut, Doran.
Because here's the problem with that topic, right? Obviously, we're just throwing this out there. It's not a real discussion because we don't know who's joining yet. But basically, the reason why that one confused people, I noticed on Reddit, is because they still don't understand, Monty, how massive Hanwha Life company is. Like, this isn't some like small fry. It's a giant fucking insurance company in Korea. So what people don't seem to understand is it's why years ago they actually were able to have Chovy and fucking Deft in their lineup. If you don't remember, remember when they did like the DRX remix on this team, because they actually have money. So I know when you initially saw that off-season news before this all happened, that was like Viper just resigns immediately, and you were all like, "Oh my God, is he a masochist?" It's like, I know what you mean in terms of if they ran that same roster back, but they're not. Like Lamonti says, apparently it sounds to me like they actually have sold Viper. Like, we're going to basically build a team around you of like pretty good players. So it's actually, as bizarre as it might seem from the results, it's actually a pretty good destination to be at in Korea. Aside from T1, there's not that many other orgs. Like, it's Gen G basically. There's not that many. Like, I don't even know where KT's at the moment. Who the fuck knows, right?
Right. And for those of you guys, Hanwha, so they do have the insurance arm, which is why they're called Hanwha Life, because they're advertising an insurance product. But Hanwha is one of the chaebols in Korea, one of the like super giga companies. They have tons of money. They actually started as an explosives company. And every year in Seoul on the company's anniversary, they shoot a bazillion fireworks over the Han River and put on like one of the most impressive fireworks shows I've ever seen just for funsies. So they have a lot of money. They have a lot of money. So not really a big deal for Hanwha to afford a few League of Legends players. So anyway, back to EG and Golden Guardians. Obviously, the implications of this are pretty severe. It's understandable. Like, first off, I do want to talk about Golden Guardians' tweet, Thorin. I don't know if you saw this.
Aside, you know one thing as well that's mental about the idea we're all just pretending that it's not like action stations, all hands on deck, like the league's dying, quick, help. Dude, the fucking LCS has had an 8-team playoffs for years now. And we're all just going to ignore that now. We have to immediately also instantly change the format. Like, there's not even any info on that yet. Like, we're all just pretending it's just mental, mate. We're all just going to go on as usual. I get it. We're always at war with these days.
I don't think...
Like, I can't have these fucking world.
I don't think there was time to, like, change the format. Because, like, I don't think Riot expected this. Hilariously,
dude, it was only a few weeks ago the EG people got fired, so I imagine this actually really did all just like dominoes fall in the like 2 weeks or something. Of course, it makes sense.
Yeah, and who knows what went on with Golden Guardians? I think it was just kind of a snap decision at the end, at the end of their season. But they haven't had time, I'm sure, to set up. Like, first off, LCS still doesn't have a commissioner, so difficult to make decisions. Second off, they haven't had time and were occupied with the end of the World Championship, so designing a format. Fortunately for them, it's a lot easier to design 8-team formats, like a lot easier. Yes. You can actually just make GSL groups now, 2 GSL groups of 4, and have a great time.
I didn't even think of that. This is another piece of news that should have come from the LCS commissioner. Instead, we get good old fucking John Needham. Whereas, I need ham, but all I give is baloney. Give me a fucking... This guy's ridiculous, mate. Like, he actually, by the way, again, went out of his way. Because I watched that Travis interview just to check this. He also went out of his way again, like I said, to stress the idea that, like, they would somehow doing the players a favour by bringing that news out at that time. Why are they so disingenuous, mate? They all are. I don't care how many things... But, it's a good guy. It's like, they all have to lie. They're all just fucking liars.
I mean,
and then
look,
also,
there's only 2 options. He's either lying or he's so incompetent he doesn't know how the offseason actually works. You pick which one it is, because it's one of the two.
Neither's good, is it? That's a Sophie's choice right then. Right? So, which is or Monty's choice, as it always has to be with the Riot, isn't it? It's the same story with every employee. Then the other thing is, it's when Licorice did that series of tweets about how he was getting released. Monty, I know what I've figured out now, what I hate about like League of Legends specifically in esports, is, in other esports, by the way, people don't always follow sort of like the protocols and the standard like norms of how you do and say things. Like, if people don't know, in CSGO recently, there was an incredibly shocking thing where some players didn't just leave Heroic, who was one of the best teams. They basically, like, there was like a PR war by the players and the org themselves while they're still connected, as in the org itself came out and basically threw some players under the bus and said, like, these players sort of mutinied against the captain and tried to get him removed and they're going to leave anyway. And then the players themselves, like, dissed the org and were like, hey, the truth hasn't come out, like, watch out, guys, or whatever, right? In League of Legends, right? Look, it's not that I want like unprofessionalism like that, but I want like some authentic human response. Like, I can't handle this thing where what you do is you come out and you go, guys, I've just been completely fucked over and blindsided, and my entire career might actually be ruined now, and my whole professional dream's over. But I'd like to just thank the people who've let me down and done this to me. That like they switch into that Stockholm fucking syndrome mode where they then always thank like the very person who's fucking like wrecked them and let them down. Like, I hate that part of esports, mate, where we like groom everyone in the industry to basically like simultaneously like forgive the person who's fucked them completely and also explain like what a great person they are. Like, it's a league specific thing, Monty, because with Riot specifically, people have always done it, but like they did it all with all the teams here as well. It's like, this is gross, mate. Like, the people you're saying actually aren't bad now are literally the people that have caused you all this heartache, mate. Like, they didn't just wake up like, what the hell? What's this doing here? It's like oil sprung out of nowhere. How I didn't see this coming. Like, because that's the other thing I find gross about this, by the way. You know, when all of these orgs do that content where they go, we're a family, we're a family, if you're a family, you give someone a heads up. You know what I mean? Like, as in, even if you still want the advantage of signing them, you just tell those players in Golden Guardians, look, heads up, guys. Like, the next week or two, there's actually some uncertainty. So, you know, like, if you get other options, consider them. You'd at least give them a break. Like, if you just tell them one day before, then you never cared about any of those fucking players. It was just beyond even business. You didn't give them the courtesy fucking reach around.
Well, I also think that, you know, a lot of the people at Golden Guardians probably didn't know this. Like, I don't think Enero knew what was going on. I think the plug was pulled from way up at the very top, and they didn't inform him until the decision had already been made and that they had these conversations with Riot. So I think that's more on the Golden State Warriors end than anything else. And obviously with Evil Geniuses, you know, I guess we're never going to see the results of the report that they've spent the last year with a law firm constructing that has never seen the light of day, and we never ever heard from again about the entire Danny incident. Even though John Needham, he mentioned that that everybody had seen the news about EG, so he's clearly aware that there was a bunch of malfeasance that had gone on within this company.
My favorite part of that is, like, that's where also Needham is like just a classic Riot scumbag, because he basically said something, you know, it's been well documented what happened to Evil Genius. It's like, by who, John?
Yeah,
John, who document? Because here's the thing: some weasel like him would probably just be like, you know, like the article in DigiDay and stuff. Like, we all know it's Richie Lewis, by the way. Just fucking say the name, like, and then because what people don't get is at this point it's obvious you're the petty arseholes. Like, you'd actually be the bigger man if you just said, like, and by the way, it was great reporting.
I mean, he did
man, wouldn't you?
Accidentally reference you and Richard in that comment, because
in theory,
who has documented this, John? Was it Riot Games issuing any kind of statements? Was it you releasing the results of an investigation? Was it you documenting what happened? Was it you actually putting out some kind of penalty against Nicole Boyd-Jamieson and the rest of the EG management? Of course it wasn't. Of course it wasn't. It was just other people doing the shit you should have done.
The investigation hasn't ended and there's no one to punish, and they've even left the fucking slot. Like, what, guys? By the way, also, where's the Reggie investigation? Dude, they're never bringing any of these investigations out. Like, those investigations really are just to waste your fucking time. And we all know at the end, by the way, like I always joke, it'd just be some Warren Commission shit. Like, you know what? Actually, the facts have come back, and it was exactly as we said in the beginning. Like, give me a fucking break. Like, we all know there's nothing spicy coming out of it, is there? So it's just a fucking waste of time. It's nonsense, isn't it? You know the thing, though, this is where, Monty, we do occasionally get a W, though. Not only is it a W that all those scumbags from EG got fired, but I'll tell you another W I realised the other day. You do realise, by the way, especially in the context that when EG won that Valorant championship, their coach is a woman. Like, I don't actually know if a woman coach has ever won anything in male esports at that level. So that is, in theory, like one of those landmark moments. Dude, the actual, like, behind-the-scenes discussion for things like the Esports Award would potentially be that, like, EG would be in the running for, like, Org of the Year or something. So it's actually, that's also why it's a good thing all the Danny shit came out, and that they've now, like, had to just pack up shop. Like, people are so stupid in esports, they probably would vote for that shit, mate, or be like, oh, because they think, like, but the narrative, the narrative. Meanwhile, like, T1 just won Worlds, but they'd just lose to fucking EG, wouldn't they? Because that's esports for you right there. That's esports.
Yeah, and I think we have to talk about the narratives that are going on, because a lot of people. So let me be clear. I do think it's good that Golden Guardians and EG are gone from the LCS. But the only reason that I'm positive about this is, first off, Evil Genius is a scumbag org, and fuck them. They can just go the fuck away out of the industry entirely. Golden Guardians, I think, at least was a well-run team and punched far above their weight for years, and had actually one of the better management teams over time when it came to, you know, getting value out of the selections that they made in esports. Very good at scouting. But the only reason people are saying this is a good thing, guys, is because the situation is so bad. Okay? People are saying this is good because everything is shit. And in the context of everything being shit, it is actually good that they're downsizing the league. And the reason why it's good that they're downsizing is now they're just fewer mouths to feed. First off, the bottom of the LCS was extremely uncompetitive. This unquestionably is going to make the LCS better in terms of average game quality. That's not even a question. Maybe not immediately, but once all the players that were supposed to be on these two teams' rosters get sorted into their rightful places within the other 8 teams, which isn't going to happen right now. Like, we probably aren't going to see Licorice on a team for spring, but by summer, I imagine we will. And the other thing is there's just fewer mouths to feed. Right? Now the revenue split can potentially go further. We can actually probably see a better format as a result of this. Like I said, 8 teams is a lot easier to deal with. We can see a very similar system to the LEC, except it'll be even better because we don't have 2 extraneous teams. We now can just make 2 GSL groups and call it a day, right? So, and we could move to best of 3s. There's a lot of stuff that we can do here that I think is just going to make a better product. And in the long run, I also think it's good for them to have fewer teams because I think they're on a long enough timeline, LCS and LEC are just going to merge or something like that. Or LCS and CBLOL are going to merge, right? There's going to be some sort of consolidation of teams one way or another because the audience just isn't big enough at the current point in time. And it continues to trend down in terms of LCS viewership. And there's nothing that is going to save LCS viewership within the LCS. Because here's the truth about the LCS. There are no new fans because no new young people are playing the game. It's dead among young people in North America, not in Korea, not in China, not in Europe. Plenty of young people playing the game there. North America, it's dead. Secondly, all of the fans who watch League of Legends, who stuck around, who are older, don't really give a shit about LCS for the most part. If you're a hardcore fan, you literally have 3 better leagues to watch that are more entertaining, have better quality gameplay. So the only reason you were watching LCS was because you like North America, but most of the hardcore fans that remain actually just prefer better gameplay. So they're going to be watching LCK, LPL, LEC instead. If you want to watch a Western League, you're going to watch LEC. Better product, better teams. So there's no reason for anybody to watch LCS. There's no reason. There's no young, North Americans who are watching it as their only league, and all the old people who've been here forever have moved on because it's dog shit.
Yeah, the other thing I don't think people realize is, remember in the early seasons of League, NA was the first major region, Monty. It was the one with all the people, with the streamers, with 40k viewers on TSM network and all that jazz. And then even in the first 1 or 2 seasons of LCS, TSM was huge. CLG was a big brand. Like, the people like Bjergsen became stars by going to TSM. So at the time, LCS was way bigger. Even then, by the way, a spoiler, like Koreans didn't watch it or whatever, but it was still big in the West. Like Europeans used to watch LCS. If you think of how the broadcasts essentially were always treated as a piggyback broadcast for like 4 or 5 years at least. But here's the point I want to make that I don't think people have fully understood, Monty. You know that news that just came out that said that the league final of Weibo and T1 was the most viewed esports match ever? Dude, that's terrible for the West because the game began at 9 a.m. Central European time, which means that if you're European, that's already a ridiculous time to have the game. If you're in the East Coast of America, that's 3 a.m. And if you're in LA, that's midnight that the game begins at. On, by the way, like a fucking Saturday or whatever. Like, in theory, that's a terrible time for the West. All of us in Europe, in America, but it's the most viewed game ever. Because, spoiler, we are a fucking speck of dirt on the League of Legends at this point in time. Like, League of Legends is just Chinese viewership with Koreans, basically. That's it. Like, that's the game right now. So, if you're Riot, by the way, the point that this actually made me realize, Monty, is I was going to do that classic move everyone does of just complaining, and I had to stop and wait a minute. If it had the most viewership, they were right. Like, I'm wrong. I'm the one who's right. It should be on at 9 a.m. That means, like, actually, it shouldn't be at a better time for me. That means essentially, like, I'm not that important to.
Well,
League
you're
of
more
Legends
important than
esports.
the North
We'll have
Americans.
to realize.
You're more important than the North Americans. And the number they were citing also didn't include the Chinese numbers, by the way. So that was Western numbers. And here's the other thing people don't understand. Vietnamese numbers were huge. there's a huge Vietnamese. So it was like Vietnam, Korea, and then the Western streams were absolutely carrying the shit out of this. So Chinese viewership wasn't even included.
Oh,
but yeah,
right,
it was.
Okay.
It was. I mean, I'm sure they'll announce that later, and it'll jump by 30 million or whatever. Of course, nobody can verify these numbers in China, so are they even real? Who the fuck knows? But the streams that can be verified by like ES charts, it's still huge though. And it's still, even among the numbers that they represented, it's still a majority like Asian audience, right? But yeah, it has been big in the West, and obviously the co-streams were really quite significant as well. But I have a suspicion, Thorin, that they're also double counting some of these numbers, because we all know that most people are not just watching a co-stream. Like if you're sitting at your PC, you probably have like Dom stream and the main stream up at the same time, or Cadril stream on at the same time, and you're probably flipping between the two to see the co-streamer's reaction. You're probably not watching the co-streamer the entire time, and a lot of people watch it that way. So I think there's also a lot of double counting of viewers. That's
I hadn't
going
actually
on here.
thought that, especially because they're streaming on YouTube, some of them as well, right? So if you do a YouTube stream, you could rewind it in theory, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you could rewind it. But I think a lot of people have multiple co-streamers open because when a big play happens, they actually just switch around tabs or monitors in order to see all the reactions. So yeah, I think a lot of people, I think there's some real shenanigans in terms of counting like the same viewer multiple times.
By the way, one thing we have to do, spoiler, this will probably itself be part of like a future Four Horsemen topic, I imagine. But the first thing this made me think about when these two teams disappear overnight, Monty, is what an absolute fucking clown show that whole LCS PA walkout last year now looks like. Because think about it. First things first, if you literally walked out the entire LCS over NACL jobs, then logically you have to walk out over LCS jobs. That goes without saying, doesn't it? And then here's the bigger point, and this is an absolute headshot. Fucking like KO, you lose, game over, insert coin so Challenger can enter the fucking arena. Because, mate, what was the whole impetus we were told, Monty, behind the walkout and why it was still a success to get none of the demands? It was about communication. Do you remember? It was about the notion that Riot and teams couldn't do things without communicating, specifically with the LCSPA, who themselves, in their own statement, it says something like they found out a few days ago themselves.
Well, Riot was
like
also
a few days.
Yeah, however, this is different because just to talk about the differences in the situation, this is different because Riot themselves didn't know about this, and it wasn't Riot really making the decision. I think there was some really weird shit that happened with Golden Guardians and Evil Geniuses behind the scene that necessitated, it caused this situation to happen. So they could not have given warning to the LCSPA more than, probably a week or so in advance when the talks became advanced enough to like terminate the TPA, which is the team participation agreement, guys. And also, they probably hadn't heard from all the teams because remember, according to their contract, the team participation agreement, they had to offer the deal, whatever deal it was, to every single team, and 8 of them decided to stay in the league and 2 did not. So I think it takes a while to reach the point where you can deliver real information in that circumstance. In the previous iteration, it was literally Riot lying to the LCSPA about challenger team requirements and then reneging on their deal and just like rug pulling them. Like it was Riot rug pulling them. This was the team's rug pulling the players.
By the way, think about how fucking cynical Riot is, though, because that implies they were fine with just packing up the whole LCS. Like, essentially, they were just like, you know what? Do you want some money, or should we just keep this going, or what are we doing? Like, what the fuck? Why is that even on the table? That implies the whole thing could have just gone pop overnight.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, yeah, what would have happened if 6 of the teams accepted this deal?
Like, think about all these bullshit conversations we have every fucking season about, like, develop talent. Like, right, here's the thing. How are we ever going to set up infrastructure to develop talent when, by the logical what we're talking about now, the same talent could have done everything you asked them to do, checked every box, right? They played collegiate. Then they came and they got on an academy team. And then they finally got their offer this season, Monty. You won't believe it. EG, that team that were winning a year ago, they've got an offer because they go on budget. I'm actually going to be the top laner. What's that? There is no else yet. Brilliant. Yeah, great. So what was I doing all this for? Like, I'm trying to build a fucking career. It's not like in basketball, you go like, oh, you won't believe it, Monty. I've got a fucking letter from Michigan. What's that? Michigan doesn't exist anymore. Brilliant. See, I guess I won't play in college then. Like, think about what a clown show that would be. But that's literally what we're doing with the Premier League. If people forget, this was the first league they even did in fucking League of Legends. Like, when Monty was working in Korea, it was OGN, like a fucking Korean TV company, doing a tournament. It wasn't even a league. Like, LCS was the thing that Riot began. Like, this is what we're going to do in esports. Like, and then look what it's become. It's become a fucking laughing stock. Like, this is pathetic.
Yeah.
Just sad as well. Like I say, how are you supposed to live your life as an American player? Like, you can't have any stability. You can't know where you're going to be in 4 years. By the way, it's same thing for the academy players last year. Like, I mean, this year, obviously earlier on. By the way, that's the worst thing about League of Legends ever. The second the World Championship ends, Monty, it needs to actually be like fucking 1st of January the next day, because to me, everything is last year at that point in time, even though it's actually still this year. That's just how years work, I'm afraid.
I mean, I think, you know, the situation just shows how neglected LCS has been as a product. Like, it had a bad format. They didn't make any kind of adjustments to fix things as viewership declined over the years. They were much too reliant on the players in order to generate good content and interest from fans. They didn't do anything.
Dude, when you look back now, you realize half the league really was just Jensen and Bjergsen being on good teams, if you know what I mean. Like, it's actually mad. There was no story building from Riot, was there? It was just all players, you're right.
Yeah,
like even the hype shit was stuff like that. It was like actually the owners made the hype. Like Team Liquid made super teams, and Cloud9 had drama with like none of that came from Riot. Like they did put in the bare minimum effort. It feels like, what the fuck.
Yeah, and because they were never really threatened, you know, LEC had to escape from being EU LCS and being in the shadow of LCS. So they had to actually come up with creative ways to design their own atmosphere, and they created a much better production. Yeah, LCS is starting to turn it around, but why now? Like, why were these clowns allowed to run a league where they just looked at the NFL and said, hey, we're going to copy that, and didn't actually do anything particularly interesting or innovative when it came to production? You know, when it came to having good storylines for the players, when it came to developing, you know, American talent, like all of the, you know, the major American talent that we talked about for the most part from years ago at this point in time, there's been very little new blood, which is why people are excited about players like Jojo Pion now, but it hasn't been coming very quickly. And frankly, like, people just, I think, got tired of LCS being garbage in terms of team quality. You know, you can only delude yourself for so long when you see North American teams go to international tournament and get dumpstered every single time for a decade. You lose hope, obviously. And they haven't done anything to fix that issue either, because they continue to keep the teams in their own little bubbles in regional leagues, so they don't have a chance to practice against better teams and actually improve. They're just stuck, right? Stuck due to geography. So yeah, the whole circuit is sad. And you know,
you say that like it's like the age of exploration, like stuck due to geography in their separate parts of the world. And then it's like they build boats around. We've already got the tech, Riot. We've already got cheap flights everywhere. Can we please just travel? We shouldn't be stuck by geography, should we?
Yeah, but
by the way, you know,
that's the life
I saw a lot of
chosen.
people, like obviously like Hawk and stuff, were jumping in and having this discussion about like the idea of making like a combined league. The joke is, Monty, this is where you were like actually right, but in a way people don't get. So the problem is you actually mean a super league of like all the leagues in the world, like the Chinese teams and the Korean teams, right? So that was the original topic under which we had that discussion like 2 years ago or whatever. But the problem is, because a European super league is what they tried to do in football that made everyone upset, people are already resistant to the idea. But the actual joke is, for LCS and LEC, it's the most obvious idea if you actually could combine the two and make like a road show or like an EU versus NA product or something.
Yeah.
Because right now, like, people will forget this detail. Remember a couple of years, it was only like 2 or 3 years ago, dude, that G2 wanted to go and join the LCS instead of LEC. And then now you could imagine it being the opposite, right? LEC slots are worth loads.
TSM tried to buy Misfits.
If I'm the top teams in those leagues, why do I want to waste my time with the bottom feeders that aren't doing anything? Why don't we just get the top 4 teams from each league and make a super league? Like, to me, it would be obvious. You could even, by the way, still make like a component of regionalship by having like them go back for the qualifier for Worlds or something. You know what I mean? You could have the whole circuit be like mixed, and then if you want, still have the slots from NA and EU, and have you just go back and play a regional, and then that's the only time you only play EU teams as well. I think there's a million ways you could do this, mate. You could have that be the summer split if you want. You know, there's so many ways you could like rejig the schedule.
Yeah, and people would actually be excited about that because for whatever reason, you guys love you NA and EU people love just talking trash about the other ones. Like, it would be a lot more fun though to watch that tournament. It would be a lot more fun. So,
you have to understand, Monty, even if that like all Korean team Liquid had won games, there'd still be all the NA fans like, yeah, NA for EU. And it's like, what even is this at this point in time? Like, what are you talking about at all?
Well, Steve's wallet is American, so
exactly,
there you go.
Yeah, true. Okay.
It is just, it's funny just to see the framing of this though, where people are saying, oh yeah, it's so great. You know, these changes to the LCS. It's really good. Guys, it's only good because the whole situation is so shit. It's not good that the teams don't have any money to continue running. It's not good that Evil Geniuses bought a slot for $33 million and probably sold it for something like $3 million back to Riot. Because here's the thing. Riot's not giving people the full amount of money back because they don't want the teams to leave because it looks so terrible. So clearly we know they offered some amount of money, but it was probably a shit deal. And it was just the people literally most desperate to escape LCS and the obligations that come with running a team. And if you're, like I said, if you're some of these teams and you're already going to be running a team that is basically just breaking even off of revenue share, why would you sell now for less? You might as well just wait around until somebody wants to pay you a halfway decent amount of money. But look at EG, man, buying for $33 million the slot and then selling it for probably, I don't know, 10% of that most likely. It's hilarious.
Yeah, but here's the genius, Monty. This is where, luckily, there's not actually people creative who are evil in esports. They're all just morons, the evil people. This is where what you actually do, Monty, if you're a genius evil bastard, is you just write the story that goes, first female black CEO in esports sells team for $3 million. You just don't list that the original purchase for 33. You just go, she made $3 million, because if people don't get the joke, that's why those like topics are so fucking tiresome, because you have to know the inputs to know if the output is a success or not. That's why I'm making that joke. Like, it's why I've always thought, by the way, some of the analogies people give about teams are stupid, because like sometimes if you underperform with a team, like obviously we're going to talk about T1 later, right? Well, they've won Worlds now, but we all know they could have won like 2 Worlds, like 2 MSI, like they could have won so many more titles. So they actually didn't even fulfill their full potential, potentially. Like they could have had a dynasty, couldn't they? So I need to know also, what were the expectations? What was possible for you to do in that sense?
Yeah. So yeah, it is just an outrageous loss of money, and it goes to show what the current state of this industry is. And it's not good, guys. And yes, it is in the short term better to have fewer teams within the LCS, but it is.
By the way, can I just confirm? Let me see, right? Would you be considered Warren Buffett if you took like 33 million and turned it into 3? I'm not sure what Warren Buffett did in his career. Did he do things like take $33 million and turn it into 3?
Let me be very specific about my criticism in this situation, Thorin.
So stupid, though, isn't it?
Because all of the teams have lost value, right? No matter how much you bought your team for, they all suck in terms of value right now. But here's the difference, guys. Some of these teams didn't act incompetently across multiple esports to the degrees that they were running 3 failing Counter-Strike teams, that everyone in the industry is laughing at their methodology because they clearly know nothing about the space or how to operate esports divisions. Yes, they got lucky with some good people at times and managed to hit on it, but it's also, I don't know, the abuse of their players, which is well documented at this point in time. And most importantly, it was their outrageous expenditures on things like their creator collective, where they were getting literally like 50 views for highly produced YouTube videos. And they had a completely wrong take about how to do sponsorship deliverables, to the degree that they lost Monster Energy, EG's primary sponsor, for like over a decade. They've managed to fuck up that deal. They managed to fuck up their legacy Dota team. They managed to fuck up absolutely everything, because even when they did well, they would fuck it up. They could win an LCS title. Would they immediately fuck it up and be scumbags? Yes. They could win a Valorant world title. Did they immediately put those players into contract prison and behave like absolute scumbags? Yes, they did. So these are the things that are Nicole LaPointe Jameson's fault. All of the team valuations have gone down, but there's only one that has failed so spectacularly, that has spent so much money on the stupidest bullshit possible, that they are now in a situation where all of the employees of that company are going to get fired as a result of these other people's sins. Yes, other teams are downsizing to be profitable. This one was the one that fucked up everything and hit rock bottom. Just to be totally clear about the difference between EG and esports winter affecting everyone, they were just built differently to dive headfirst into the ground.
You know, my favorite part about it all is, if people don't know, the company behind Evil Geniuses is called Peak Six, which obviously is a play on the NFL term pick six, isn't it? And if you think about it, they have scored a touchdown, Monty, just going the wrong way, haven't they? That's the problem. So, like, that's two on the nose for me. I can't handle that. That's two on the nose.
But you know, it's just outrageous that people within this industry are not actually criticizing.
Dude, you couldn't even find him all ludicrous, like, comparison and reference point, like the Warren Buffett of esports. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Turns gold into lead, as it were. Turns gold into lead. And it's sad for those of us who have seen the history of Evil Geniuses and at least respect the brand as a legacy org within the space. It's a big bummer. But it's also just outrageous that people are unwilling to criticize the people we know are responsible for this. Thorin, by the way, saying I am esports on Twitter, instantly cause for condemnation.
Game over. Yeah,
Game over. Everybody in the industry has to come in and just like whip you on social media over.
Still, you know.
He says, I am esports. Everybody's like, he must be destroyed. literally run a multi-decade legacy brand into the ground, get a ton of people, your colleagues in this industry, get a ton of them laid off from their jobs after moving to Los Angeles and Seattle, have them abused frequently at the hands of the executives of this company due to their own incompetence. By the way, don't take my word for it. Have a fun time. Look at Evil Genius's Glassdoor page, guys, and see what people say about the upper management. It's fucking hilarious and terrifying. And you can't say anything. This is all out in the open. It's all there now. We should all be railing against these people, all of us together. But I am esports much worse, apparently. So there we go. And me saying I am esports wasn't even my fault, because it's a systemic problem of people thinking that they are esports in the esports industry. So I actually was the first. I was sort of patient zero, Monty, alerting the world of a problem with narcissism in the esports industry. But would anyone listen to my call? No, they did not heed the call, believe it or not. And like,
I can't believe I live in a world where they actually called like the Warren Buffett of esports. I can't handle it. It's just so stupid.
She's retiring before her time, like Sean Connery at the apex of her career. Just absolutely outrageous. And look how fast this. Remember, by the way, Thor.
Monty, they should have mailed her contract to the Marx brothers. That actually would, in fact, have been a better, plus EV move in esports. Believe it or not.
You know what's extra hilarious is that an underappreciated part of that email was them calling themselves the best esports team, right? And how fast we went from that email being written to the entire company being disassembled, to the degree that they are looking like they're going to pull out of absolutely everything, and they've already pulled out of LCS. Because I'm just telling you right now, guys, if they're ditching LCS, you think they're going to stay in Blast? You think they're going to stay in Valorant? Good joke. They're out completely. And
also, their timing, as usual, is shit, Monty, because their pull-out game is hella strong, but they've still ruined a load of kids' lives. So, there you go. Let's talk talk about fucking League of Legends, shall we, mate? Because obviously, like a bunch of these topics we talked about now will seed into future Four Horsemen episodes. Obviously, like potentially the LCS shrinking down, the EG topics. Obviously, a classic one we can pick up at any moment, right? There's actually a few things on the World Finals, though, Monty. I want to get into. There's a bunch of things before we get into the match itself. So one is actually a mad one that I even realised yesterday that I don't think anyone's thought about, which is here's how I know, Monty, that everyone's full of shit when they now retcon history and pretend they always knew T1 was going to win Worlds and they were really strong at that. Dude, remember the tournament began with like Liquid almost beating them, like when Pioshik was just like fucking smurfing in like that BO1, like they almost began with like an upset in the whole tournament. Like that even just shows they really did like level up as the tournament went on. Because one thing I want to bring up, because I thought we would like seed you into discussing some of this, is I feel like there's two parts to this like whole narrative that are whack as fuck. So one is essentially it's like a very quick version of why I actually think people who say Dom hates T1 are actually morons, because it goes like this. They're just gaslighting him. What happens is Dom likes high-level League of Legends. That's a familiar sort of pattern repeat. This is an echo in here. That's what we've been saying on this show for 10 years. He likes high-level League of Legends, and obviously his life is literally watching high-level League of Legends. So guess what? It actually saps his enjoyment of the game if a team either A, doesn't play high-level League of Legends, or B, gets constantly overrated for how good their League of Legends is. So then what happens is he starts to get annoyed by the fans that constantly gas up the team that isn't playing the highest League of Legends, because he's watching all of it, the LPL, all the LCK games. And then once he gets really annoyed, they go, wow, wait a minute, he doesn't hate me, the guy gassing it up. He hates the players in the team, which is like, that doesn't even make sense. So then finally, this is where you know it's madness, though, Monty, because finally, the team that supposedly he hates now does, are you ready? Checks notes, play high-level League of Legends. And what's their conclusion? You've heard it a million times. They go, oh, I bet Tom hates this. Like, go back to the beginning. What was the whole reason in the first place? He obviously doesn't actually hate Faker, does he, you fucking cretin? Like, Monty doesn't actually hate fucking Keria, does he? Like, in this scenario, they were frustrated when they didn't play the best League of Legends. I just said earlier, dude, this should have actually, this is why, by the way, them winning Worlds is awesome. But like I say, it actually now sparks that discussion again that everyone forgot about this summer. This was supposed to be a dynasty. They were supposed to win all the finals. Like, this actually could have been like the best 2-year run in the history of T1 org. They could actually have done like a fucking Grand Slam themselves last year if they'd have got their shit together. Like, that's actually a mad angle. So yeah, to me, I think people, it's already so sad when people do that angle of it, you hate the players or whatever. Like, no one hates the players. What happens is it frustrates us, especially when you're like an org like T1, when you're not playing world-class League of Legends and playing up to far.
Yeah, and obviously Dom is playing into it as well. Like he just hates the T1 fans because they are incredibly annoying, guys. I get comments from tons of T1 fans about, "Oh, Monty must be hating the fact that T1's winning." I'm like, do you know me and my history with T1 at all?
Everybody round to the playoffs.
I also predicted them to win constantly. I did. I predicted them to win every single time that they actually won in the playoffs. So I was pretty confident in them, I would say. Yeah. So I don't know, man. The whole thing is just crazy, but it's just the fans that are so annoying. And Dom plays into it because the fans are irritating and they give you a lot of what you want in terms of publicity. And he's a showman, and it's funny for him to like pretend sometimes that he doesn't like T1. But the reason, as your point, Thor, and the reason why they were frustrating is because, look, they have been in 4 consecutive domestic finals with this roster, right? And they only won one of them. They have been in 2 world finals. They finally won one at the very end. They were in an MSI final. They were close to beating JDG at this MSI, closer than anybody else was at the time.
Yep.
So there were reasons to, and basically like they were stopped, by BLG, but mostly by Gen G, in these scenarios. And this is a team that just couldn't get over the hump, which was very disappointing because we talk about Gen G maybe not playing like they do domestically, but T1 didn't either. And they were just so anti-clutch in the most important games. They played scared, that we didn't see the same flash of brilliance. And that's why it was so frustrating to watch them. How many times on this show have we criticized Zeus for you know, giving up the world final MVP to Kingen last year.
Oh,
well, he
easy.
fucking earned it this year. You know what I mean? We
Yes.
finally saw what we wanted to see from him. This is what we expected. This final is what we always expected from this team. It was their fault they were not living up to their own excellence, because we've seen this in the regular season a lot of the time. They just haven't been able to deliver in the finals where it mattered most, but they really did this time, right? So now all the narratives have been reset around this team. Finally, Zeus is there having a great series on the most important day, right? Finally, they're not playing scared. Now, part of it was the opponent. Thorin and I warned you that if that BLG Weibo series is close, this is going to be a completely horrific final, which it was. It was absolutely terrible. But that's what you get, you know, in single elimination. Wish we could have had another banger like a JDG T1 rematch, but we don't get nice things because we can't have double elimination.
By the way, we can obviously also, in a minute, we can also talk about what it means for the future of these players, because I do think this result potentially does change, like we said, the off-season in Korea. Because if you think about the players, the 3 players that were up for replacement are all people that, like, you would potentially really consider kicking off the team. In fact, the whole team, let's be real, aside from Faker, potentially is on the chopping block. And who even knows? Maybe Faker could have considered retiring. Because if you look at the squad, every person in this team had a fucking glow up, Monty. It was ridiculous. So Zeus was just the best player at the tournament, in my opinion. Like, he played awesome. Just in lane, all facets of the game. Like, even some of the games that, like, the scoreline doesn't look that crazy, he was always winning his lane. He was always ahead. He was always doing a good job. Then you have, like, Keria obviously defined the whole tournament. Like, literally, the champion build he plays is the biggest strength T1 had in the whole event, in the draft. That's why by the end, like, that whole shenanigans maybe get into in a minute of, like, Weibo didn't even bother changing sides eventually. It's like, fuck it. You might as well just take it at this point. You can't do anything about that.
Dude.
There's no extra options in draft. And then obviously Faker, like, had a few key signature players. Like, the Azir player was baller. In general, he even survived in the final. They didn't have to do much just on the picks that we were talking about, like fair play. He was able to just pick stuff and survive in the game. And then the bot lane, like Gumayusi, the whole meta was played into his hands. He looked great. Like, he even had that 1v2 outplay on fucking JDG. But I want to bring up this angle. To me, the actual defining topic, and like I say, if you want to talk about great play, Zeus was the best player in the tournament. That's a great storyline in itself. He did actually deliver, like I said, on that past potential, Monty, to join the line of like Sneb and all those great top laners. But the angle I thought I'd bring up is, I actually feel like there's almost like a misunderstanding about the meta at this tournament, Monty, because people keep talking as though like T1 like invented the meta. They did, but in fucking spring. That was the craziest part about how they won this tournament to me, is, you know, my biggest complaint about League has always been the same as in Dota, which is that the worst time ever to be number 1 is like May, because you're just too far away from like the World Championship. So the chances of you surviving with what make you number 1 is just so low. So it's why, in fact, if people don't know, in TI, it's very rare the team that wins the international was the best team in the spring, because it's just too far away. Right? In League, this is actually a rare instance of where all that shit from the spring that we kept talking about on shows, like, this meta is basically the reason why everyone said Keria was the best player in the world, Monty, because not only was he the one setting the meta, but as you saw in this tournament, it was perfect. No one else could actually do it. Even Chris, who had a couple of the champions, he couldn't. He looked shit in the finals, mate. Like, Keria just like draft gapped everyone in the tournament. Like, think how rarely that shouldn't happen in 2023, man. You've got to be pretty special in 2023 to have like a fucking boatload of champions no one else can play in the whole world.
I mean, for a team that their coach just ditched
And
them.
even when people do play it, mate, his ass looks busted. Everyone else is playing ass ADC. He's actually playing it fucking for real and support and looking awesome.
His Bard was also
and then
very
also
good.
the coach left, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, their coach, Faker's injury, their coach left, you know, Bengi pieced out.
Do you know what? I've just realized, Monty, that's actually why it's a blessing. Faker clearly did this. He went back in time and told himself to be benched. And he was like, you know, it's like one of those scenarios where it's like, you know, we need to take the L now to win in the long run. Because think about it, if they'd have won otherwise, Monty, the fans could still say that Faker never won Worlds without Bengi.
I know, it's very important.
Now, thankfully, they can't. Yes, the evil has been cleansed. Grimmet Wormtongue Bengi has been cast out down those stairs of fucking whatever, Rodan or whatever it was.
That's right. Only one man can have 4 titles.
There you go. Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, Bengi just like suddenly left, you know, during the summer splits, like the day that they were going to play Gen G in the round robin, the second round robin. It was looking bad there for a while, but to their credit, I think the draft was a huge part of this series. I think there's several
Where the fuck is Benki now? That's what I want to know. Because surely somewhere he's like, he's just in a bar somewhere, Monty, like looking up at the screen, like Faker wins, unparalleled fourth world championship. He's like, oh well. What can you possibly do? There's no response to that. It's like you just have fucked your whole career up just over it. Like, oh well, see ya.
I'm sure he'll get picked up again, but. There are some days, Thorin.
He probably had his straight fire contract with Golden Guardians for the upcoming year. He probably just got signed like 3 days ago.
They had the Bengi welcome head coach Bengi graphics all prepared.
Yeah,
that's right. I think one of the interesting thing about this final is that once you've seen enough finals. Big esports matches, you can just tell sometimes that it's just over from like halfway through the first game. You can always
see when the loser gives up mentally, can't you? You can just see it in the body language and everything.
I tweeted like halfway through game number 1 or at the end of game number 1 that Weibo had already lost this series before they even started it. I remember the first Overwatch League final when I was casting it out of the Barclays Center, the stadium in New York, and I just watched. It was between the Philadelphia Fusion and the London Spitfire. I watched the Philadelphia Fusion walk on stage, and I just turned to Doe and I said, these guys have already lost this game. This is crazy. Just because you can tell by their body language and the lack of enthusiasm. Dude, Weibo came in with no fucking strategies. It was wild to watch this final. Like, it's like they didn't even prepare. I started watching these drafts and I was like, really? Maokai first? That's where we're going? Like, did you not see any of the rest of this tournament? Yeah, Maokai's okay, but like, what the fuck are you guys actually doing right now? Did you miss the part where T1 just dismantles you with lane priority? So you come into game number 1 to first pick a fucking Maokai, which, by the way, guys, Owner can play Lee Sin, and Maokai is just absolute paper in the jungle early. Like, he's great in the late game if you can get there, but when you give all of the lane priority to T1 and they can invade with the Lee Sin, and you're going to pick Tahm Kench. So basically, first off, you pick blue side, and T1's been by far the best red side team in this tournament. Also true that T1 won all their blue side games this tournament, so you could say there's not really a good choice here.
On that one, sure.
Probably not a good option here, but the way that T1 drafted was just so intelligent because they saved their. Normally, we haven't seen the jungle pick save for R5, but we did see T1 pivot in the JDG series to picking earlier, but their bot lanes earlier on the red side and saving the R5 counter pick for Zeus. But this time around in game number 1, they hadn't seen the support. And you know what? They're down. They could pick Vi. They could pick Lee Sin. Vi, obviously terrible into Tahm Kench. You know what's really good into Tahm Kench? Fucking Lee Sin. Remember that Owner guy who has like an 85% career win rate on Lee Sin? Well, Tahm Kench can't do much against Lee Sin because if he devours somebody, you both get kicked into the team. Or he kicks the target away from you where you could be devoured. Or he kicks the Tahm Kench away from the target he wants to be devouring. So there's not a lot of good options. But why the fuck are you trying to blind pick an Aatrox when you know he plays Yone? He played it in the semifinals, and he destroyed with it. Why are you doing this? Weibo, how did you beat BLG? Did you save R5 counter pick for the Shy? Oh, you did. Has the Shy been the best performing player on your roster? Well, fuck it. Let's pick blue side, and then let's get countered in every fucking lane anyway. Like, what the fuck was this preparation?
The Shy got counterpicked every single game top, even though, as we say, that was like the one player win condition you potentially had. Was like, not only you need the Shy to carry money, but you need to break Zeus's mental, so let's just give him counterpick all game for. What? That's so mad, isn't it? I know, it's so mental, mate.
So let's get pushed in, and then let's have a Maokai that is just going to get his ass beat at level 3 by a Lee Sin as he just wanders freely in the enemy jungle. And by the way, guys, I want to put this out there right now. T1 didn't even really play well in these finals. If we're being honest.
It was a bit meh, yeah.
They played a lot better versus JDG. Faker, like, dying to that gank after they did the invade in the jungle, really bad. like really bad. There were a lot of moments where they gave up advantages that they should have had, and yet Weibo would just insist on throwing harder, or they would just draft themselves into absolute corners where there wasn't a good answer in the kind of mid and late game for what they were trying to do. You know, credit to T1. They came in and they just took Renata Glass no matter what. Keria has been an awesome Renata Glass. I said in the last episode, guys, Crisp has only been good on Renata Glass. He's been running it down on a bunch of other champions. Guess what? Dude can't play Bard. But why are we even picking Bard? Thorin, why are we picking Bard in the first rotation of the draft on blue side? You hadn't even seen they picked Bard before they had even seen jungle, top, or mid lane. Like, why it made sense for Beryl to pick Bard in the World Championship final last year in Game 5 was that there was a Victor and a Varus on the enemy team. They're low mobility champions. You don't pick it before they pick fucking Lee Sin and Kali. Like, what is going on with these drafts? They make absolutely no sense. They make no sense. You know what I mean? Why are we early picking Maokai in game number 2? You picked Maokai first last time because and then you banned the Sylas. Oh, well, let's just pick Maokai and fuck it. Let's let Faker have the Sylas, which he always picks into the Maokai in this tournament. So what is your strategy? Are you either picking the Maokai and banning the Sylas, or why are we suddenly picking the Maokai and giving Faker the Sylas? Why are we doing these things?
Because this was all part of a years-long intelligence operation by the Korean government, where Danny was the coach of T1, remember, last year, that made the 10-man roster, then got fired, but that was all part of his sleeper agent arc, where he went to Weibo Gaming, via which, in cooperation with BLG, they eliminated Gen G, the true threat to T1. And then, after getting to the final, they activated Agent Danny, or whatever his name is.
and Agent the Shy.
And then, yeah, basically, their incredibly patriotic gesture allowed Faker to win a 4th world. So in the end, T1 does win, after all.
Dude,
T1 does win.
Dude, the Korean plants were so deep at this tournament, by the way.
After all of that, Monty, it turns out after all that when they actually get that guy who was doing the draws and that's like a mask, like Mission Impossible. That's Bengi. Bengi was doing it the whole. He was the one putting Genji on the other side, seemingly easy bracket to lull them out. Oh, genius play.
I just don't get it, Thorin. Like, I don't understand how you can continuously, like, you pick 3 games of blue side when your one win condition was giving Shy wacky ass counter pick matchups in top lane.
You'd think he'd at least hit 1 game. You know what I mean? Like give 1 game, and if it doesn't work, go back to just getting beaten on the other side. You know what I mean? Get 1 game.
Thorin, why when you see, so in game 3 they first pick Azir, right? Just to keep it away from Faker. Okay, fine, do that. Then you see T1 pick Zyra Khan. Now, be Weibo Gaming. You could at this point in time, if you want to pick your bot lane, just fucking play Caitlyn Lux. You can do that. We've seen it. Why are you playing Varus Bard before you see mid jungle top? Why are you doing this? And also, Chris can't fucking play Bard, as we saw. His early roams were okay, but holy shit. Oh, the Bard ults, man. The Bard ults are there to set up crowd control. You want to place them down so then the Kennen can come in. He was literally canceling ults on his own team. It was horrible. It was absolutely miserable to watch. This final was butt cheeks. It was awful. Like, it doesn't, like, they didn't even come in to win. If you told me that Weibo just got drunk all week, I would think the results would be the same. Now, this team was not prepared for fucking anything. Like, even like, fuck T1. Even in isolation, playing against any team in the world, their picks do not make sense.
Because sadly, they did what you actually hope the team on the other side of the bracket never do, Monty, which is they actually look like they just didn't believe the T1 read on the meta. Like, they either thought they could deal with this, or it's just fake, or the other teams don't punish it correctly. Because I agree, none of these drafts make any sense, mate. It's mental.
We saw the meta develop, Thorin. We saw Weibo.
I mean, the only thing they essentially did correctly was they did force Faker off his champions, but it just turns out that's all they did. They didn't do anything else. Like, sure, you don't just win automatically.
It kind of worked. His RA looked pretty rough.
He did. Like I said, this is why, by the way, that whole topic of like this probably needs to go. It's like not really. Like it's a great one for his legacy, but like it didn't even carry the final. Like that was Zeus, mate. What were we talking about?
Oh,
like,
and owner.
Zeus gapped the fuck out of the shot. Oh, by the way, also there's the other thing I forgot to mention earlier when I was going down the list of players. Dude, the owner play against JDG that we talked about last week on Rel. That alone almost like deserves him to give a fucking chance to be in this team again. He's mega. Like that was a fucking like tournament defining play. It was game 3. If JDG wins that game, maybe it's a 5-game series. Who knows, right?
So I would also argue that, I mean, I think for me, Owner was probably the MVP of the entire tournament. I thought his level was night and day compared to what we saw in summer. And I love all these T1 fans who come at you and are like, apologize for what you said about Owner. I'm like, no, Owner sucked, man. Can't we just appreciate that he actually played a lot better now? He was terrible there for a while if you were actually watching him. But that's the
thing I can't handle about the gaslighting. They act like he was doing this now the whole time and we're just haters. Like Azor Monte, every single other international final, Owner was doing players like that rel play I'm talking about. And then we were just going, I'm just going to deny that happened. Like, it's actually fucking mental, the gaslighting. Like, the reason, I'll just stress it again, nobody hates T1 players. They hate dickhead T1 fans like you. That's who everyone hates. The only person in the whole scene we all hate. And the joke is even Faker probably hates you. We just can't say it for money reasons. You know,
he's too nice. He's too nice. Look, I think Faker did have a good Akali game. I thought, for the most part, he did his job. But you're right. He wasn't the most spectacular member of his team. But here's the other thing about the finals. Owner actually had the hardest matchup because Weiwei was the only person playing human League of Legends on his entire team. Everybody else didn't show up on Weibo. And at least Weiwei was like kind of doing all right. For a lot of the finals. So Owner actually had the toughest matchup and he still kind of styled all over him. It was,
by the way,
it was rough to watch.
One thing I do want to bring up though, look, I know it's not the greatest timing now because this final was shit, but it's not even just that we had to wait a week for the final, Monty. There's only one match left in your entire circuit if you're Riot. And we can't have like proper shoulder content about the final. Think about this, Monty. They just get served narratives on a plate and they don't do anything with it. So you have, right, are you ready? Not only, this is the same narrative I set up for Knight, but it doesn't matter, it can apply to Xiaohu. No Korean mid laner and no Chinese mid laner has ever won Worlds. So when you're in the final, if you're Riot, think about the smorgasbord or buffet you have of options on this, right? So you can do this, Monty. Either Faker wins his 4th, perfect if you Riot, or a Chinese mid laner wins Worlds for the first time, great storyline. Or how about this one? The guy who won 3 MSI titles versus the guy who might be about to win 4 Worlds. Like, there's a million fucking narratives. We didn't do anything with any of them. He didn't even do anything about the Shy. Like, bro, they're so fucking lazy at Riot. Like, I don't think people get it. I'm not joking. It really does take me half an hour on my end to do those videos that we do on our company, right? Look, obviously the editor might take a few days. That goes out saying. But, like, the idea Riot can't just put, like, 2 editors... Get like, by the way, they have people like Theon already. Just get someone like that. Tell them script a video for the finals. Like, where is the hype? Like, remember the only reason our industry survives is eyeballs. Like, get some more hype on the game. Come on, man.
What a missed opportunity it is too, just to even create more Faker content. So first off, teams can't actually practice that much before the finals because a lot of the other teams are on break, right? So how about you go to the T1 facility, set up some cameras to make it as easy as possible for Faker, and you just do an hour-long interview, 1 hour, with Faker talking about his previous World Championship experiences, right? Talk about his 3 titles. Talk about the 2 that he's lost, right? Let's have an in-depth interview with Faker and just take an hour of his time. It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it to do that. And what a hype piece that would be before the finals. I do think that the teasers they were doing with a lot of the players and the teams talking about each other and the storylines were very well done throughout Worlds. But I do think there definitely could have been more had they tried a bit harder.
But and obviously, by the way, I'll just point out, no one else has got this joke. This is exclusive just for you. I've crafted this one like a pearl piece of sand inside an oyster. So you know when Faker said that line, because it's what the Golden Road and Knight and JDG walk in, then Faker said, all roads lead to me. That's because he's obviously a roaming mid, isn't he? He's a roaming mid. So that's a free beach for you, mate. There you go. No one else got that one. Pretty free. Pretty free. Good tag. I'm here all week.
Yeah, I think it was disappointing not to have more stuff though. When it comes,
people never get that. I know, but I'm fully aware that joke shit. That's what makes me laugh about it. I know it's not a good joke. That's why it's funny when he gets like, I even say it with a shit-eating grin, don't I? I don't even try to set it up. Come on, man.
But yeah, look, I think this final was really disappointing. It was such a walkover win for T1.
I know. There was no hype whatsoever in the whole match, was it? Like, by the way, all you needed, think about, because there are people like me and Tom who are like the T1 haters, like, all we need is a tiny spark to give us hope. There's nothing, like, the whole game's like, it's like, in fact, it was actually like trying to watch someone in camping where they don't know how to make a fire. It's like, nothing's going on at all. They're just rubbing two sticks together. Like, nothing's ever going to happen. I'm not getting a spark. It's like, you never will, mate. It's all damp and shit. Like, what are we going to do here? Like,
I just love Weibo just like throwing every advantage that they have. Game 3's looking competitive. They're up 2 Drakes, and then they just decide to fight for 3rd Drake for no reason. Just give it up, guys. Just walk the fuck away.
Here's another example, Monty, of why we say so many fucking times that we hate upsets. Here's why I hate upsets, Monty. Because since NRG beat G2, G2 didn't get into the playoffs. And then because G2 didn't get into the playoffs, NRG got to play Weibo, who hadn't beaten anyone Asian. So Weibo got to go to the semi-finals. Now, Weibo could never, ever beat Gen G. It would never happen in a million years. But they didn't have to play Gen G because BLG upset Gen G. So by some insane, like, diminishing returns of upsets, we ended up with BLG, one of the few teams potentially that could even make a semi that Weibo would have a chance against. And even then, they barely beat them by this much. So that as a result, in the final, T1 unironically got far and away the easiest match of the playoffs in the grand final. That's why I hate upsets, because what I just showed you there is that's the nightmare, where one upset leads to a bigger one, and eventually you get a scenario, like I say, where, like, let's be real. If before this tournament began, Monty, I told you the final is T1 against Weibo, you would actually assume Weibo must have had the craziest gloat performance, and they didn't. Basically, like, the Shy was pretty good, Weibo was all right, and like maybe Crisp had like an out of glass game. But that's about it. Like, they weren't even that good in this tournament, Monty. That's the craziest thing. And also, it also did low key. Look, if you're T1, you take the win. Who gives a shit? Obviously, you're just there for the title. But to actually make it satisfying, the best result would have been either Gen G, because T1's lost them, or BLG for the rematch of getting the revenge from MSI. Like, that would have been, those would have been potentially banger games. It would have been an awesome narrative too. The actual narrative of beating Weibo was kind of shit in the end, wasn't it? It kind of just was a whatever, like I say. That's also why I hate upsets though, like I say, because they just ruin future matches, unfortunately.
Well, and it's also true that Weibo just had insane variance throughout the year. One week they would, beat JDG in a best of 3, and then they would just lose to some shitters. Like, their form has been really inconsistent, which is why I think a lot of people who routinely watch the LPL were very wary about them being in the finals, because you just knew that they were going to turn back into a pumpkin at some point in time, and it was very unlikely they were going to be able to sustain a run throughout the entirety of the playoffs. It was kind of amazing they made it as far as they did, but they certainly did not look remotely competitive in the finals. And I think, frankly, their strategy just going in was completely wrong. Like, sometimes you see in the earlier stages of Worlds, before the meta has developed, those kind of reads that just fall really flat. But to see it in the finals, when you know exactly what T1 has been doing for the last several series, is very weird.
Think about how mad this is, though, Monty. The only Asian team that Weibo Gaming beat at Worlds, and they made it to the final, was BLG. That's it. Isn't that mental when you think about it? That's impossible, isn't it? How can that be? How the fuck is that even possible? What the fuck is this?
It's so crazy. My new favorite narrative, though, now, Thorin, is just to be obnoxious, is saying that we don't live in the age of LPL because 3 of the last 4 world champions have been Korean teams. Because, look, that narrative has been kind of weirdly persistent, right? Where it's kind of changed over time. So obviously MSI has been enormously successful for Chinese team, but who gives a shit about the best tournament format? It's still technically the second most important tournament of the year. But you saw a lot of these narratives where it'd be like, oh yeah, well, 3 Korean teams make the semifinals, but the Chinese team is the one that actually wins out, and therefore LPL is the best region, even though Korea has actually been much more consistent in terms of getting teams out into higher brackets and stages of the tournament. And now you're dealing with a situation where we've only had one LPL Worlds team win in the last 4 years. So if anything, it's looking like things were a lot closer than a lot of people were saying previously.
I mean, let's be real. Even if like JDG had won this year, it doesn't mean that like even though like on paper people had BLG or LNG as the second best team, no one would really know until they played the matches. Like actually, that's another sad reason why it's only T1 that beat them. Like there's a lot of matchups. This is why the lower bracket would have been the shit of this tournament. There's so many storylines you wish you saw that you never got to see. Like what happens if like KT plays against pick your team BLG or something like that in a best of 5? Who the fuck knows, right? There's so many matchups we could have made.
Yeah. Plus, Gen.G would have got another shot, which I desperately wanted to see. I think KT was kind of cooked by the end. Similarly to Weibo, they just seem kind of done and not really interested in competing anymore. It's kind of the read I got from them, but I would have liked to have seen
as well. I definitely need to see that JDG low bracket match because they actually looked like I said, that's why the actual fucking like Faker play in game 3 was epic and the order play. Because if JDG wins that game, they already in game 3, game 4 were in positions where it's like, hey, they're starting to like look like the old JDG. They might start taking over now. So like I don't know if any other team beats them. I want to see them play against Gen.G or we want to see all the matches we wanted. We never got to see any of them.
Yeah, I still think that T1 probably comes out on top of this tournament. It just felt like they had all the answers to everything and that the meta had drifted away from JDG and they couldn't necessarily rely on the kind of classic front-to-back team fighting because T1 was basically playing a very high-pressure, fast early game that was based around picks. And this is the way that they played in spring. It's the way they played last year. And the meta just kind of went perfectly into their wheelhouse. It was very lucky, I think, for T1, because if we had seen the meta that dominated most of summer, there's no question in my mind that JDG would have won this tournament. And even if the meta had persisted from the early stage of Worlds.
If someone watching now is one of those Western plebs who just tries to say every year that Knight and Chovy choke, therefore they weren't actually ever good players, all I'm going to say is this: by your own logic, Bjergsen was dog shit. So take that home to the bank with you and pop that in. No, but what about the LCS? No, we don't count domestic leagues. Sorry about Worlds. Sorry, that's all that counts. By the way, Knight won MSI this year, but we're just going to pretend he's shit. Oh, brilliant. Okay, guess he's trash then. My bad. I guess it's his fault. Belveth had to the fucking game repeatedly. By the way, that one still does win. The ultimate, I know what we need to do, right? Obviously, Darday awards sometimes don't get awarded now. We need like double agent of the year because like fucking hell, the competition was strong this year, but I think that Kanavi wins it. I think Kanavi's Belveth performance wins double agent of the year because dude, that's like those NBA refs back in the day where like if they had to rig a game, like sometimes it gets out of control. You have to really politically rig it and give one team like 60 free throws. Like, dude, he hit it about 3 times in that game. Like that one where he went like through the mystical journey. Like, no, you know what I'm about. That is
yes,
so
when he went through the barn portal. I actually think that one would
look like match fixing or something, didn't it? That looked crazy, mate. What the fuck was that?
That one was more unforgivable, or that one was actually more forgivable than him walking into those sand soldiers at Dragon and just dying
the Dragon pit. Yeah,
because like I understand you could just misclick on a Bard ult, even though you should know that Bard's going to throw a portal there, right, and anticipate it. But when you're literally just sitting there at your monitor and intentionally like moving into 3 sand soldiers and just getting autoed to death.
Plus, everyone forgets in that game, I'm pretty sure earlier he even had one where he like survived on 1 HP as well. So it's like, mate, he was just in the fuck out of that game. It was crazy. By the way, though, as an aside, though, one thing I will say is, since we were talking previously about like roster moves, I actually want to see in the future, someday, it doesn't have to be now, someday Kanavi has to come back to Korea. We have to see Kanavi in an actual Korean team. Like, this guy clearly has like skills at the fucking game. Look, he can obviously throw a few games, but like after this year, I want to see everyone who's Korean who gets good. I want them to just come back to the motherland eventually. I want to see in a real LCK team.
There are rumors that he is practicing with Gen.G. If Chovy sticks around, that could be a thing. There's a lot of weird rumors flying around right now.
Is it implied that the reason, like, for example, that Gen.G could have Chovy, even though technically they just released him, is the idea that they just signed a smaller contract is why they released him as well? Is that part of it?
Well, they didn't have
Or
a
do they
choice
mean
to release
releases
him.
and just allow you to talk to people or something?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a contract for next year, so he's just a free agent. Now, I imagine he's still going to negotiate with Gen.G. Obviously, Gen.G would like to retain him, but there's no reason why he can't sign another deal with Gen.G now that this one is expired, especially if he likes some of the other players that they might be getting on this roster. Pays is the only one who's actually contracted on Gen.G for next year. And I think at this point in time, if you're Gen.G, you just can't. You gotta break it up. It hasn't worked. You've come in as an overwhelming favorite too many times, and just it's not even that it's not like a T1 level where you make the final and then you disappoint. It's like they flame out. I mean, flaming out in quarters to BLG is honestly just pathetic. Especially looking at that side of the bracket now. I mean, imagine being Gen.G and watching that final and having to suffer through watching this horrible Weibo team put on that performance in the final and realize that it could have been you playing there instead. I don't think you mentally come back with that. I don't think anybody's like, let's run it back again, boys. Same roster next year. I think that's the death blow to confidence that the players would have in each other.
Here's the question for you then. What top lane are we getting? Because we need. Here's the thing. I don't hate Thorin. I actually do think he has gotten better over the years, but that's definitely what I'm changing if I'm Gen.G. Like, come on, let's get a carry top laner. Yeah, there you go.
Get Keen.
Why not?
I think this roster with like Chovy, Keen, Pays, and then, I mean, if depending on whether they can keep Delight or not, if Kanavi came to Gen.G, would be really huge. Be a great team. But I think Arnold, the CEO of Gen.G, has been very, he's been very forthright about the kind of state of LCK franchises. And because Gen.G basically operates like a Western team, they don't operate like, the big chaebol teams like Hanwha or KT or, T1 that are all about marketing for the big brands in Korea so they can afford to lose more money. Gen.G's trying to operate like a sustainable business. And so they've never had the biggest spends. I think they've made up for it by having very good management and very good structure around the players. And that has attracted very good players to them who like playing on the team. Certainly, how can I phrase this? I think they treat players better than a lot of those other teams that maybe are more aggressive in their treatment of players. Gen.G, I think, is a nice place to go. So we'll see if that is able to attract any star talent back to this team, but they'll certainly get somewhere. I mean, they're still in the, top half of teams when it comes to spending usually, but they're not going to be number one ever, I think, in terms of bankroll, as long as the current, financial issues in esports continue to plague the ecosystem.
Because when Faker won this fourth world's title, the real problem you have in terms of all these discussions about GOAT players and who had the best career is like Faker's the only one essentially who didn't have like either crazy bad luck, because in general, aside from the DRX one, he wasn't supposed to win more. He could have obviously, but he didn't, right? Most great players in League, the amount that haven't even won Worlds is crazy, Monty. Remember, Daft hadn't won till last year. Uzi I never won. There's a whole bunch of players who've just never, like, obviously, Rookie won one. That's it.
Zhao, who failed to win this year.
Yeah, most people just have 1 or 0 titles. So the problem is Fake having 4 and some MSIs and all the domestic titles. It's just like if you're going for accomplishments like resume, Tom Brady style, it's like Tom Brady's too far out of touch. No one's even comparably close. Like the problem is like 7 versus 2 is like nothing, is it? So if you're going off that, that's one of the things that always feels dissatisfied about League to me, Monty, is like, in fact, I'll even go further. It feels like every year the best player in the world doesn't win Worlds most years. It's like the odd time it's happened. Because like, if you think about it, right, it's not just Chovy and Knight. Like now this is Ruler as well. Like Ruler won ages ago. He wasn't the same player he is now. Like the amount of times I've seen someone smurf the whole year and then not win Worlds, it's why it's a bit of a bummer. It's why my hope in the future is, one, I do hope eventually they make double in for Worlds, but I just hope they don't fuck with that MSI format now. Keep that the same, because that tournament is awesome. And if they actually have that tournament the same way, in the future, League's going to be way more exciting. Because think about how, like, I always used to think the old MSI was basically just like a very delayed build up to the final of LCK versus LPL. Like there was like one match you really care about. Maybe you care if like the Western team has a slight upset chance. Now it's actually a banger tournament. So, because I'm so sick of this world where like the rumor now was like maybe like Ruler and Knight go to EDG or something. It's like, I'm so sick of the best players in the world having to constantly rebuild teams. Like in an ideal world, the best player would just stay there and you'd build around them and then you just re-up the next year. But it's like, I almost get the feeling if you people like Ruler, they have that like problem from Dota 2 where it's like everything's about winning TI. Like Ruler's whole career now is win worlds again. That's what he has to keep focusing. So as a result, he's jumped from team to team to team. Like if he goes to a third team in a row, it's going to be ridiculous. He was like the best player or one of the best players.
Well, I don't know if JDG's just even wants to keep him at this point in time.
No one knows, right?
We know that the cost of that team was so astronomical that you may not really feel like spending that much money again because you didn't accomplish your primary goal of winning worlds, even if you won everything else and arguably made the best League of Legends team of all time. I think that, as we've discussed, is on the table for this JDG roster. Even though they fell short in the semifinals of the most important tournament, they were still ridiculously dominant for most of this year and certainly passed the eye test with flying colors compared to any other team in the world and came into Worlds as overwhelming favorites. It is, I think, it'll be hard to keep Ruler. I don't know who else is going to be in the bidding for him, but if he wants to potentially take less money, if his goal really is to win Worlds again, he might have to come back to Korea and go on to, not have the fattest contract in the world in order to accomplish that.
And by the way, the other thing that is totally gross is the fact that Tom is a world championship coach now. So like, wait a minute, why is Faker in some fucked up, like incestuous career relationship where like he has to have like, he had Bengi, his former jungler, as his coach. Now he has Tom as his coach. Like, remember, he tried to win a Worlds with Blank, if you remember. But obviously, Bengi had to get inserted last minute. Like, this motherfucker just loves these junglers. What's going on with these whack-ass junglers? Like,
obviously, the truth is that... Obviously, the truth is Faker is the coach, which we've known ever since Denny was fired, right? That's always been the truth, which is funny now because Koma's coming back to the team as head coach again. So he's made his rounds. Maybe, I don't know what caused this to happen. Certainly Koma, you would think, would have less power than he did previously when Faker was younger at a very different point in his career.
It's the most ridiculous thing, though, isn't it? Because like it's like your joke. That makes it sound like the day after, Faker's won Worlds, like he gets a buzz on his phone. It's like, you up? It's like, why does his ex just reach out like that, like right after he won Worlds? Like, that's so shameless, Coma. Give it a fucking week to make yourself not look desperate, bro. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the message just says that you up, been thinking about us. Like it just just leaves like they're like, give me a break, bro. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, it's just weird because I can't imagine that Koma is going to have the same level of authority that he did the last time that he was on T1. He's probably just going to be more of a logistics and, player manager because at the end of the day, Faker has absolute supremacy over this iteration of T1.
I mean, it's a pretty good job to have as a puppet, isn't it? Just basically turn up every day. Be like that episode where Kramer in Seinfeld went and got an office job, and the joke is that he just walked in one day and pretended he was in this office, and so his briefcase just had fucking biscuits in and stuff like that. Never really working there. So it's just the best. It's the best. Like I say, all I'll say is this. If you really believe these jobs are real, then you should all be congratulating Tom for just winning the world championship. But I notice nobody actually believes he did it, did you? You don't believe it at all. Nobody believes that. You would all fail a lie detector test. You all would. I know you would.
Coach of the year. I can't wait for at the Korean esports awards this year. They gave all of those DRX players like player of the year, even though they were terrible for most of the year last year. Well, I'm sure Tom is going to win coach of the year. Truly, the guy who was the interim coach for a quarter of a regular season split.
Oh, by the way, one thing I did think was quite cool. This is also why I actually thought a lot of narratives got a bit missed by people on the broadcast. Another one I was thinking of was, dude, last year, the iconic image of the final last year is Keria crying. Like, everyone remembers that moment. Like, it's actually one of the harder ones. It's way worse than the old Jensen ones, if you remember. Like, he's actually, looked like he's emotionally distraught. Like, it's actually pretty sick that they didn't even change players, ran it back like Samsung did, and they won this year. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, what a great fucking turnaround that is. Like, if you make a documentary, that's even where you'd start. start, isn't it? Like, you'd start with them like failing last Worlds and then be like, think about that, because that's the problem. Is this was like one of the great like 30 for 30 fucking Worlds runs, wasn't it? Because it obviously begins with Faker being injured. The rumor is like they're going to break the whole team up. Like every player literally has been called a choker except Faker, basically. And even then, it's like he doesn't step up in the big games. Like the narrative spin around was fucking crazy on this one. I don't think there's ever been a turnaround like that ever in League of Legends. Think about where they were when they were losing to Brion, etc., and then they win Worlds a few months later. Like, there's no way.
This is done. Obviously, there could not have been a better sequence of events to burnish Faker's legacy than what has happened.
Oh, also, you know what? Here's the thing. Unlike other people, Monty, I'm not actually just a fucking salty cunt who can't give it up. I actually do give credit where credit's due. So you know what, T1 fans? You do win this one. I did think it was funny that you kept pumping the odds up, but then did sort of win Worlds. So you know what? You win that one. You get to win that one. Well done. You win that one. Okay. Fair play. That means you also won money on esports bet. So well done. Congrats.
Yep. Well, we did well. We did well.
You did. I didn't do that well. So I was betting against T1 every time, didn't I? So whatever. It's all good. I win them all money. This is why I'm good at CSGO, isn't it? So don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's almost as if you couldn't have crafted a better narrative around Faker this year and his return to world champion status from the injury, from his team doing so badly without him, which inadvertently showed how much his career arc has changed from the, god of the mid lane mechanical dominator to, macro team shot calling god that he is now. And then to come back and to win.
If you ever watch those videos, you know, the ones where you can see him press all the function keys on the whole time. If people don't know, Faker to this day plays like a jungler where, like, as his character's moving, he just looks at all the other lanes. Like, everyone used to say to LS back in the day, like, oh, it's not necessary. It's just like overkill to do that. You're just doing some StarCraft shit, right? The best shot caller probably ever in League of Legends seems to do that every game. Like, I think there's something to that, boys. You know what I mean? I don't think it's a bit crazy. Like, he seems to be pretty fucking good at knowing what's going on the map. Like that Jat thing you pointed out, like that actually was straight fire, the comm that he obviously made to his teammates. Like, it sounds like he really does just shot call the whole game.
Yeah, and he's constantly just looking around the map, like you say, with the F keys. And anybody who's watched his stream knows that it's a pretty disorienting experience if you're not used to doing that. It's not very pleasant to watch because you actually just can't process information as quickly as he can, because knowing what he's looking at, right? And having played, tens and tens of thousands of games of League of Legends.
The reason why, as a casual, you can't actually look at the screen, but it's actually hard to watch if they're streaming, like from ProView, like you say, is because he isn't actually looking at the whole screen. His eyes looking at the one thing he wants to look at, like a guy moving here on the jungle. But when the camera shifts, you don't know what he's going to look at, so he can instantly pick it up from peripheral vision. Whereas, like, you're looking like, what the fuck am I looking at now? Oh shit, I'm back. Like, and it is really disorientating. But that's why, though, you have to train yourself to play like that, because essentially, if you do it, it's why the Korean StarCraft pros were the best at it. Like, it is like the ultimate way to be. It's like, essentially, it's like a way to like hack your brain into multitasking when obviously you can't normally multitask. You actually do have to focus on each thing one by one, don't you? So I don't bring it up as a minor reason. Like I say, the guy who just won Worlds is like the greatest player ever, does this to this day. Like, I actually think it's crazy because I have seen some Western, I won't name names, I've seen some Western players to this day who move the camera with the mouse. The camera, bruh. They move like we're playing fucking Dungeon Master, Monty, on a 90s PC. Like, la, 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 la. They're like moving the cat. What are you doing? Faker's literally like watching 10 screens at once, like some fucking like, data input hacking scene from the 90s. I'm in the mainframe. It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's so ridiculous. Meanwhile, Meteos is like, shit, what's going on over at mid lane? Oh, fuck, my camp's up. I love League of Legends, bro. It's so stupid. And then we all sit there for real. We all sit like it's fucking like Charlie Rose or something, like some interview with some big boffins around table, like, and how can the American talent grow and defeat these Koreans? And we're all sitting having some big powwow and brain. Whoa, what's going? Whoa, the brain drain. Oh, what's going on? I think we need to invest in North American talent. Like, it's such a clown show, this game. We have to gaslight ourselves every Worlds. I can't do it.
It's all right. There's all the players in LA are too busy out buying Balenciaga shoes to actually practice and learn how to use the F keys properly. It's fine. It is funny though that we have to actually pretend
list listing Balenciaga shoes for sale, not worn. We'll take nearest offer. You must live in Culver City or whatever. There you go. There's going to be a lot of ads like that on Craigslist now, Monty.
I do love how the fans though every time
used Golden Guardians jersey, you couldn't wash tears out of it or something like that. You know, rich mark like that.
Used to shine in Nero's head.
There you go.
I do think that it is so funny though that the fans get so concerned about, oh, how do we make NA more competitive every year? It's like, have you just watch Faker stream, man? You tell me when you're watching a Western player stream when it looks like that, and then that's when we'll know. That's when we'll know.
Because the reason I bring it up, like, that's why I say I don't bring it up as a joke. Like, these are just minor things that we don't even do. So, like, forget the bigger things. We don't even do these, like, basic protocol things of what people do. So, like, that is, I don't think, like, this is a bigger topic. Like, it's not just that, like, we don't have enough players. Like, we don't even use the methods they use, guys. We don't even think about the game the same way they do, you know?
I can tell you just straight up, you know, from my time in coaching, obviously back in the day, one of the big things before we had a lot of timers that were actually built into the game itself is that a lot of you'll notice a lot of pro support players still play in windowed mode, right? They play it with a smaller, the game is smaller than the actual edges of the screen. And they would literally just keep Notepad open and they would copy paste timers in there and then spam the, you know, they'd be basically shifting between the windowed mode of the game and Notepad and copying all of the timers in there. I've never seen a Western player do that ever. Ever. So they just, unfortunately, it's just a lack of dedication to the craft and like getting these kind of interesting, you know, micro meta skills that take additional effort that these players seem to not be too terribly interested in doing.
Plus, I actually thought Rich's Wrath said it best on Twitter. Like, the actual real narrative of Worlds is cooler if you do it right. It isn't that Faker's like the simple of League of Legends and he just dominated every time. No, it's actually that he was that player 10 years ago and now he won as a macro god. Like, if you actually had to say, why did Faker win his 4th title? The actual real answer is because he probably has the best macro understanding of any League of Legends player ever. Like, that's cool. Like, because if people don't know, that is the one thing that wouldn't decay over time. In theory, you can build on that and get better and better at it. Because if you ever see not only the comms translated, like, dude, he's like the linchpin of everything they do. He's the one who seems to call everything, and they all look to him for like the direction, clearly. So, like, I think that's a cool angle that, like, the guy, like I say, it sucks if you look just at like skill, like, what the hell, where's Ruler's title? But if you said to someone, but Faker understands the game the best, then shouldn't he win? Isn't that kind of like satisfying in its own way?
I also think it's just remarkable for him as a player. Because how many players do you see that can revolutionize their skill set in that way? Because if you look at the start of his career, he was the guy who had the huge champion pool. Like, his strength was he would dominate you in lane in a matchup you'd never played before, and that he's debuting for the first time in a final. And how do you beat that guy? Because he has counters to everything that you're offering, and he's just going to mechanically outplay you, and he's going to outplay you with matchup knowledge. And then we get to the point in his career where he's really not capable of doing that anymore. And we get to a point where he's played 3 champions heading into a world finals. I guarantee you that's never happened for any player before, that they managed to make a world finals only having played 3 champions to get there. And yeah, we got to see a couple more in the finals because Weibo decided that was the ban strategy. I promise you, if they didn't decide that was the ban strategy, we would have just seen more Azir Orianna. That's what he would have picked. And you get there, and all of a sudden, it is about the shot calling now, and it is about his ability to lay traps on the map and like just get his teammates into the right position to drive the dagger in and to secure every objective. But there's no guarantee that the Faker that existed 10 years ago was going to turn into that macro guy. That is a very different skill set. That's a very different skill set. Now, the odds are that those people are 2 different people in any other esport. Like, the fact that this transformation occurred is definitely the weirdest and most hype part of Faker's career, I think, because he wasn't, you know, it would be like, what, simple, just changing into the best IGL in the world suddenly, like, or over time, right? Just completely shifting the way he played the game into a skill set that he never had to have before. Right? Faker, like, Chovy isn't that guy. Think about Chovy, for example. Chovy Chovy needs Peanut to do the thinking for him, right? Chovy is not the guy who's making those shot calls. And
which, by the way, the jokes write themselves. So he has a peanut brain. Brilliant. Wonder why it doesn't work out every Worlds then. Brilliant.
Yeah. That's the thing is like, let's talk about Beryl. Right, he's won 2 world titles.
Not talk about Beryl. He hasn't even won this world. Right? What is he not this world? We're still talking about Buddy Beryl. What the fuck, Beryl?
Beryl was in 3 world finals in a row and won 2 of them. Now, I hate the fact that that's a true statement, but it is. And Beryl doesn't have hands. Okay, so
Beryl is still the shadow goat of League of Legends, who should have won 3 titles in a row. And actually, because like I say, the best part about it is the fact that he's like the only player on the 2 different rosters. Because to a moron, that does make him sound like the secret goat, doesn't it? It's like it has to be him that's doing it all. I love it. I love how stupid that all that. Because essentially, Beryl being the shadow goat of League of Legends is the League of Legends lore equivalent of Jar Jar Binks being the actual Phantom Menace, super evil Sith Lord. Like it's the same. It's the League of Legends equivalent of that narrative. So I'm going to keep it going as a real thing. I love it. I love that take. It's the shit. I love it.
It is wild to think that he should have won 3 worlds in a row.
It's mental, isn't it? I know. It's just so bad. What a world.
There is the new rumor too that Beryl is going to, if Delight goes to Hanwha, that Beryl is going to Gen G because they need to replace the shot caller.
It's going to be Pays and Beryl. Fucking hell. What's Pays done to deserve that? Come on. I know, that's so gross. He had an awesome year as well. He played really well. He gets Beryl as... By the way, he goes from Delight, who's straight cracked as well, to Beryl as a support. Really? That seems cruel and unusual punishment.
It's too funny.
By the way, the other thing as well to me is, like, I actually think another angle that people missed as well is, dude, now think about how sick the Gumayusi story is. His brother is a StarCraft champion, and now he's the fucking League of Legends world champion. Like whoever their fucking mum is, I made the point on Twitter, like, she should be fucking famous, like the fucking Kelsey players, mother, fucking JJ Watt's mom, or whatever, the Manning brothers. Like, this mother's like some fucking esports, like, matriarch or something. Isn't it? She's actually killing the game. She's dominated 2 different esports games. That's pretty good. Not bad.
That's really, I mean, the legacy of that family is just really crazy.
The only thing is, though, it does fuck with me, though, how, like, Gumayusi seems super social compared to most Korean pros, whereas, you know, like, Innovation was like Faker. He was just a blank fucking wall, wasn't he? Like, Gumayusi's actually got, like, a straight fire sense of humor as well, mate. I vibe with him. I think he's pretty cool.
Yeah. Guys, if you don't know Innovation is definitely one of, if not the most singularly boring professional esports player of all time, which in esports says a lot because there's a lot of really boring players, and Innovation might be the ultimate king of boring players. But Gumayusi has swagger and he has a sense of humor, and he has much more of an aggressive edge to him, which is a lot more fun. So you wouldn't know from their personalities that they were related. Only from the absolute dominance of their gameplay.
I also still can't believe he played fucking Jin at this Worlds. That's so ridiculous, isn't it? They actually were. That's the thing. Aside from Faker, the rest of them actually did sort of flex their champion pools and really show off what they were capable at the tournament. It was cool.
I think it just goes to show how well constructed the roster is, because they don't require versatility from Faker to have versatility as a team, and he can pick control mages 24/7, which have always been meta in every phase of League of Legends.
I've got the cursed question for you, Monty. Here's how we'll test. First of all, if you're a fan, one of those ones that's like, can't we just like enjoy the win? No, dickhead, this is a talk show. We don't wait and enjoy the win. We talk about the next thing, don't we? You have to keep talking. Spoiler, dead air is the end of the show. So here's the question I have for you. It's a cursed question, but I have to ask it. Here's how you can test what people actually think about this Worlds run, Monty. If it was up to you, do you run the exact lineup back? Do you just keep the exact 5-man lineup at T1 and try and run the whole thing back? Would you do it?
I think you do, because like I said, this lineup works, and it relieves a lot of pressure off of Faker in order to perform. I don't think they, and besides, they seem to have gotten over the mental hump which plagued them, and I think that's really important, because now that they've won Worlds, I think maybe they don't crumble in some of those other finals mentally in the way that they appeared to previously. So if you've gotten the yips out of you, I think you probably try and run it back if you're T1. I don't see why you wouldn't.
Because here's my problem. I know what you mean. Like, put it this way, just as they could actually have won all those other international finals and had like 2 worlds and an MSI or 2, right? There is a world where they could have had that potential. At the same time, the question is, right, if you run it back now, what you trust in, Monty, is that this is like the Astralis Globe, and it's like you've got an overchoking and now you're just going to win everything. Okay, that's a good reason to stay with the lineup. The thing is, though, if there's going to be any issues ever again, then that's the problem with the team. Is like, it is a team that's like the strength of the pack is the wolf is in the pack, not the wolf, right? Because if we're going on individual players, like, look, I actually always thought Zeus was like a very skilled player. He's kind of shown me, like, that's legit. He was the MVP for me. Keria, I mean, just the versatility alone is fucking bonkers. It's hard to root. But I do think, at least for jungle and ADC, you have to at least consider it. If you think of some of the names that are out there, like, these are 2 positions where you could potentially you could make the team even better. Yeah, why not? By the way, here's the scenario. I know everyone's going to think of what they have now with Gumayusi. If I put Ruler next to Keria with Faker with this team, do we not just like guarantee we win next year? I think our chances go up, surely. Like, he's a fucking cracked out player. That's my problem. Is like, it's not, there's no hate on Gumayusi. It's just there's better players. Like, if I had to take Ruler or Viper, there's a few different names I'd take over him.
He's a free agent.
Maybe even Deft. Yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
So I was playing with Keria already. By the way, that is also an interesting detail. I saw someone post it on Twitter. Now Deft and Keria separately did win Worlds. Isn't that ridiculous? They played together all those years. They actually did win, just separately.
Yeah, and you could definitely reunite Deft and Keria as well. I think Gumayusi, though, was the best player overall on T1 this summer, which makes it a little bit harder to get rid of him because in the earlier phases of his career, like last year, he was probably the easiest player to get rid of. But
yes,
when you hit kind of your lowest low this summer, he was actually the best performing player on the team. And he's been the most consistent player over the course of the year.
Do you really I'll just do it again. I'm only going to do it when it's really funny, because I'll do it. I'm going to take a Twitch comment and go mental on it again. So a guy goes, lol, Gumayusi got them to Worlds, right? Well, you know what, Monty? There's no player in the entire world they should recruit, because no player who doesn't play for T1 got them to Worlds. So logically, can't replace anyone in the team whatsoever. You know what, Monty? You won't believe this, but actually Faker's decided he's going to retire and Chauvy's available. But since Chauvy didn't get to the Worlds, can't recruit him, sorry. So we're just going to have to bring Pobby in again. There we go. Pobby sit on the bench is what got them to Worlds. So problem solved. Thank you, Twitch chat, as usual. Literally not adding anything. Twitch chat is the definition of that famous quote that says, like, great men speak when they have something to say. Like fools speak to say something. Like, that should just be the text on Twitch chat, and then like, enter your foolishness here. Press send. You are now putting this into another human's brain. You are fucking hell. This is better. It's like Chinese water torture, but collectively crowdsourced onto my mind. So Twitch chat's off. Anyway, don't worry about that. We're all good on that one. The point being, you could potentially upgrade and make it even better, couldn't you? Because I actually do think the other players you can't really replace. Like, they are too cracked out. Like, I think Zeus and Keria, now that they win, they are potentially the best.
It's really hard to
players.
Figure out who you would replace those guys with, unless you got like Delight, right? But I think Zeus is probably the most difficult one to replace right now, because there isn't a good option for another Korean top laner that would be his equal in this scenario.
Also, by the way, Keria is just actually like one of the cutest players of all time. That's why him and Deft is too much in one lane. Like, Keria, when you see him on camera, dude, he's like baby Yoda or something. Is he even real? Like, he's just some magical child with all a million pics on his arse. I can't believe that actually worked as well, because now, by the way, this is how I know none of you watch LCK. This is why everyone was raving on all the shows about Keria in the spring, because he was doing shit like this. And we would all watch him lock in a champion for weeks on end, and then other people either one-time it and fail, or just not even bother picking it. Like, it just made it so obvious, like, this one player is like this far ahead of the meta. It's ridiculous. And it's clearly not even just an issue, Monty, of like, other people can't, like, hands-wise play the champion. They just didn't know, like, the feel fact. Like his fucking ADC supports are bonkers. It's actually outrageous. Like, mate, that like fucking Ash Arrow just hits the mid laner all day long. It's like you'd believe it was like heat seeking or something. It's ridiculous. Like, the guy just really did just like, on that one particular way, he was just ahead of the whole world, which is crazy as well for 2023. Like, this isn't the beginning of the game where people two-trick champions. Like, this guy just has like the whole fucking draw of champions on his own. It's crazy.
And he plays all the ADC champions as well, which is what made him so dangerous this year.
And his mechanics are obviously just way better than most of the supports, aren't they?
Yeah. It enables him in many ways. I mean, the joke is like, obviously he plays like Lee Sin support too. I mean, he's played so many wacky champions at support at this point in time, and he did set the meta in spring. He was the single. If you look at the entire year, Keria was the single biggest meta innovator of any professional player this year in the world. Period. Especially when we consider what happened at Worlds, right? It would have been true even if this meta never appeared at Worlds, because it was so true in spring. I mean, the level of innovation that T1 was putting out was crazy. So big credit to him. Big credit to him.
The only thing is, though, Monty, I've got bad news for you. This is where we have to actually prove that we truly love esports, because I love esports so much. In exchange for Faker and Keria and Zeus getting to win Worlds, I'm willing to accept Joe Marsh. I'm going to say it on the record. Joe Marsh is now a world championship owner in League of Legends. That hurts me to say it, Monty. I don't want to say it. I wish I could unsay it, but it's too late now. It's happened. It has happened. In this one particular scenario, that statement is based in reality. He is the world championship owner. I can't deny it. It did happen.
Well, but see, now he's been much less annoying, so it doesn't even make me angry anymore. The Joe Marsh's sin was never actually doing bad things. I actually think he's a pretty decent person, and I think.
So the other thing is, I'll just say this. Look, even though you are my mate, LS, they wouldn't have won Worlds if you were their coach. I'm just saying. Listen, I'm just saying. I don't think I'm being a hater by saying that. I'm just saying. You know, I'm just saying. So, just saying.
Yeah, I think in Joe Marsh's case, like, his sin was never being bad for the scene. I think he actually did do a lot to drive LCK into a better place. And
it seemed like he did.
His sin was just being annoying and pretending like he built esports when he is definitely he didn't have the proper respect for the OGs. That was his biggest problem.
The real problem we had is like that we have to individually battle each of these people. I need to find some sort of a Godzilla-esque way to turn like Nicola Putt-Jameson onto a Joe Marsh and then just have them like fight like rhinos or something, and we just sit back watching. I can't believe it. Who's going to win? Who gives a shit? Like, you know, that's what I want to do. We have to find some way to turn them against each other.
How come we can't design celebrity boxing matches with our own?
That would be the shit.
With our own lineups of choice.
The real sad thing is, low key, part of me, and this might sound like a mad statement, it's sort of true. Part of me is actually low key a bit sad that I am like older at this point in time. And like, it's just that is a young man's game. Because if I actually was the same person I am now with all the same rivalries and stuff, but I was like 28, the temptation to do one of those like charity boxing matches would be so high. It would be ridiculous. And if I did it as well, here's the thing, because I have a certain perspective that other people don't, which is I actually think in sports like combat sports, even though, look, cheating in theory should never be done, because it is like you do get lose and get beaten up. I think cheating's not as bad. So I would definitely do all like mad sus stuff. Like when no one's looking, I would be doing all the little fucking like grab on his fucking gloves and like do the little like fucking elbow in his fucking nuts or something. I'd do all the dirty ass shit, of course. And then I'd play it up like the heel.
I mean, I would do it right now, but it's only regular boxing because nobody actually wants to do kickboxing as one of those promotions, because unfortunately, you know, you could kind of get by without knowing boxing and boxing if you're in that scenario. If you actually tried to put somebody who kickboxes against somebody who doesn't really kickbox, it would end in tragedy. So they're never going to do that. But hey, if that's on the table for anybody who's actually in my weight class, I'm down. Yeah,
but here's the thing. Maybe Nicola Putt-Jameson does aerobics, and therefore she could actually be entered into this match, because that would actually be an esports metaphor for her esports experience relative to her job. In this case, her training relative to the sporting endeavor she'd be undertaking.
Well, if we ever have a show match for mental gymnastics, perhaps perhaps that would be more suited.
I think the Gamer Doc might win that one, mate. Like the one I can't believe to this day was where she was doing all those tweets that would be like, think about this industry, it's full of bloody nepotistic grifters who just are all fake and don't even know what they're doing, and you'd just be reading it like, what are you talking about? Like, isn't that like, it's like that meme, you know, that meme where there's the guy just pointing at himself in the mirror like, you fucking asshole. Like, it's like that's all her tweets were. It's like, isn't this just for you? Like, who are you talking to right now? This is just you in it. What?
I do think it's funny that you know, some of Richard's reports were talking about how much they like hate endemic people within this space. So
Oh, it's
they
mad, isn't it?
very deliberately just created an entire management structure with nobody who actually had any history in esports, and then just patted themselves on the back and told themselves that everyone else was idiots while they were the ones burning the most money of all. It's too perfect.
That's the saddest thing if people don't get it, is like the fundamental mistake that the Peak Six people made, as far as I can tell, isn't even individual things like what game did they go into, or, you know, did they hire Cassard in CSGO? That's all by the by to some degree. The biggest problem they had for real, like we're talking about here, is actually a classic problem of the last 10 years, which is for real, some people whose whole priority in life appears to be being politically woke, sacrificed every part of this company to that end, and that's all they had in the end, was that we just did a bunch of woke hires. Like, the reason it's so shit as well, by the way, is because the joke is people like Potter proved you could do both, you idiot, if you're competent. You could be woke and succeed. But instead, sometimes, because you prioritized being woke, you ended up with like management structure. As you say, the joke is it feels like you're hiring people who hate the industry. You're hiring them.
They
into,
do.
like,
They did. They actively
so
hated
weird,
it.
I know. That's such a weird perspective that you would ever think that would work, though. Like, if you hate the company, yeah, great idea. But like, if you wanted to succeed, it's a terrible hire.
Yeah. And like, they did make a bunch of good hires. I mean, they had Kelsey running the team. They had Potter. I mean, these are both coaches that ended up doing very, very well, and who have extremely long histories within the esports space, right? Nothing questionable about those hires whatsoever. They've been around for a very long time and have, I mean, worked as either professional players or coaches for years and years and years now, and deserve to be in those positions, and they have been rewarded for it. And I think, you know, it's great to have seen them have this success that they did. So there was a lot of validity in there too, but the way they went about it was certainly questionable, and especially just denying the expertise of the entire field that they were going into is one of the weirdest, absolute weirdest ways to run a company I have ever seen. All right. Do you want to talk about any other topics you want to talk about right now? We're still waiting for a lot of these roster stories to develop.
It's just up in the air, isn't it? That's the problem. So, like, in general, we tried to stay away, like I say, from the LCK ones, because
the LCK stuff is just not
pure
finished.
Free for all. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
And we knew this was going to be crazy, guys, because of the number of contracts that were up and the fact that real free agency couldn't begin until the end of Worlds for China and Korea.
Maybe we'll do in the next week or two. Maybe we'll actually do an episode where we get like a Korean scene expert and do like when the moves shake out. Maybe we'll do like a Rostermania for Korea or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Or something, you know.
That'll be easy.
That'll be fun. Yeah, because there's so much. The key thing to me is this. Right now, like I say, this could be the best off-season ever, because the mixture of like the salary cap stuff means that like there's going to promote a lot of movement. And so, dude, you could make a lot of strong fucking LCK teams. Like, the real joke is LCK, aside from T1, obviously wasn't actually that strong at this Worlds. Like, you could make some much stronger lineups from LCK. You could make some bangers.
Yeah, and like I said, at least a couple of the teams like Hanwha and D+ do seem to be like splashing out. And I wonder what T1 is going to do, because winning Worlds solves a lot of your financial problems, because the only way you get digital goods revenue is if you win Worlds and get those skins. Right. And that brings millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars into your team. Now that they've won, they may actually try and bite the bullet. Especially because I think there's a misconception about the luxury tax. It's not all being implemented next year. It's being phased in slowly over time. And I think it's like only 20% of it is coming in next year or something like that. It's a much smaller percentage, because they had to deal with existing player contracts. It really is designed for like a couple years from now where it's going to be fully kind of in place and enforced. And so there's still going to be opportunities to spend big without really hitting a lot of that luxury tax in the coming year.
I don't know if you saw, but in the final, it was basically implied that because he didn't play in the final, that like Keria is sad he can't pick like Ash or Lux. I think it was Lux was the skin he wanted, Monte, right? This is like first of all, Keria, boo fucking who? I've won the world championship, but I'm not allowed to pick a skin. Why not, Keria? I didn't play that champion. Well, fucking you don't get to get it there, do you? You know what? Give me that back. Give this one to Beryl as well. Beryl, a man who appreciates the world championship when he wins it. This is why Beryl wins, not you, Keria, you ungrateful little bastard. Little baby Yoda motherfucker. I'm so mad suffering from success angles that month. You're like, oh, it's unfair. I can't even get skins. I didn't even play. Like, also, spoiler, think it through, Keria. No one fucking plays Lux except gold players in mid lane. Like, no one's ever going to pick that fucking skin. You're not going to get any money. You should pick, like, fucking, I don't know, pick, like, Renata Glask or something. Pick some of the people I actually play, you idiot.
No, you don't understand how much money a Lux skin would make, Thorin.
People would buy a Lux skin. Okay.
Tons, dude. Lux skins are like one of the highest selling skins, I bet you.
Fair enough.
Because everybody plays like throughout all the lower tiers where most of the people are. Like you say, Lux mid lane, Lux support. I think the Lux skin would absolutely pop the fuck off. Yeah,
you don't get to pick it though. You have to actually play the fucking champion.
Of course, you actually have to play it. And they could have, they're classic, they're a classic Caitlyn Lux bot lane duo. He could have picked it at any point during this tournament.
The joke is Weibo actually entered them on that. They probably would have picked it if Weibo just picked the other side, right?
Yeah, probably.
So Weibo fucked him on that too. There you go. Brilliant. Crisp actually fucked Keria in every possible way. No good final.
Yeah. I think, obviously a Bard or Renata skin would be sick, but I think those would sell a lot less. The real thing was that Faker managed to sneak the Ahri pick into the finals, because if I had to guess what the top selling champion skins would be, I would say it's probably like Ahri, Lux, Yasuo. These are probably
Blitzcrank for the OP Blitzcrank skin. The one with that robot one or whatever it was that you're not allowed to use a pro player.
Maybe like Lee Sin.
Maybe
everybody has a Lee Sin skin.
Obviously that police volley bear skin after Republicans a few years ago. Whatever. Shout out Cloud9. That joke's for you. You made that a real thing, not me. Policeman volley bear, whatever it is, whatever that was called.
But yeah, I think a T1 Ahri skin would just be crazy in terms of volume. I said on Twitter, but the ideal way for them to deal with that situation, Thorin, is to simply combine the pool party Ahri skin that everybody's been waiting for with the T1 Ahri skin. So you just put her in a T1 bikini, and then you just print money. That'll keep the guys. If they release a bikini T1 Ahri skin, I promise you they'll run back. T1 will have the funds to run back this current roster for next year. All right, you wanna do some viewer questions now? We have other topics. Rekkles going to Keria. We touched on it a little bit. I don't even know what to say about that. It's just weird.
Problem is, like I said, first of all, it's not really like what everyone thinks it is. Like if he was no one watches Challenge Monte. That's why I say if it was actually LCK,
and people will watch it now.
If he was now like the support of like Brion or something, yeah, that'd be interesting. Who gives a shit about Challenger? And then the other thing I'll just say is this: maybe I'll have some more content on this coming soon. But spoiler, he's probably the worst player ever to roll swap to support and go to a country where they don't speak your language as the primary language. Dude, the whole role's about fucking supporting people, speaking to people, and like understanding what your teammates mean. But spoiler, he has zero skills in any of those three areas. Like he's fucking dog shit and knowing what a support needs. He's never done his whole career. He's just left him out to dry. He fucking doesn't talk. You'll find out more soon. And then thirdly, he's clearly not someone who has like the mindset to play like a sort of. The joke is this is his it's the anti-skill set. He didn't have a great sense for when to move around the map and what to do with macro play and when to do a Roman move. And that's the whole role. And you're playing with Koreans, by the way. I feel sorry for the fucking 17-year-old Korean ADC that's going to have to play with this guy. Like, you're just fucking suffering for the next split, mate. Enjoy that. Enjoy that life.
I want to see him have to play engage supports, Thorin, where he has to play Alistair.
I know.
And actually W into an enemy team.
Like, spoiler, like I say, you might find some more about this soon, but essentially, Rekkles is the guy who thinks that people like Hylissang and Mickey X, the best engaged support players ever from the West, are like morons who shouldn't ever have gone in. So enjoy him playing those champions. Like, there's no world he's ever playing those, mate. If he is, there's no way he's doing that shit. I can't believe it.
Enchanter only support player.
I know. Ridiculous, isn't it?
He just uses blitzcrank speed to run the opposite direction.
Meanwhile, the ultimate irony is this, Monty. His original role would have been the best role to play. Just go there and just fucking click the mouse and have everyone else play around you, and then you just leave lane when the support leaves the lane. Like, it's actually the easiest protocol to set up for a non-Korean speaker. So, like, I don't even know what this is just a stupid PR move, mate. Like, I will say, by the way, and this is a point I made, it's forthcoming on the Side Select show that I do with Rich's Wrath, which is, I do think actually marketing-wise is a very clever move, because I was saying this to them, is that if you've never been to Korea, Koreans fucking love exactly the type of luxury good brands that Rekkles literally was like the face of when he did like that fucking which one was it? Was it no, he didn't go Gucci. It was Louis Vuitton, maybe. Which one was he?
I don't
remember when he was the face of one of those like mega high-end luxury brands when he was with G2, if you remember. He was like a model for one of the two. So, Ralph Lauren, that's it. So, like, that's exactly the sort of shit that Koreans are loving and buying in, like fucking Gangnam and Sinchon and all that. So, like, I actually think if they play their cards right, they could actually probably get loads of like marketing deals within Korea to use him though. Like, they love fucking Westerners with all that gaunt fucking model look, mate. He could actually kill the game in that sense, outside of the server. By the way, the Korean women will be loving him as well on the K-pop angle. Like, that side, I could see him being very popular in. Yeah,
I'm just surprised that it's T1 that did this, because what if they're really trying to develop players? There's no shot he ever ends up on their main roster. So why bring him in to this team in the first place? Like, I kind of understand if it was one of the smaller teams that wanted the publicity, but T1 doesn't need the publicity. You know what I mean? They're the last team that needs it. They're fucking Faker.
Yeah, but that's the other thing. If you're a Rekkles fan, remember, they're not in reality, Monty. They're not based off liking him as a player in League of Legends. So they believe there's now a 0.7% chance that, like, he somehow ends up playing at Worlds next year with T1 in the roster with Faker. Like, you know what I mean? Like, by the way, the second that deal was announced, literally, like, that fucking news post, Monty, was the news post that launched 1,000, like, disturbing fucking, like, fanfics about Faker and Rekkles instantly being written.
By the way, the crossover...
Can't quit you, Faker. You know, like, that shouldn't give me a break.
The real horror, Thorin, is going to be the crossover between Rekkles fans and T1 fans that are now merging into one super deranged entity.
It's basically like Blade 2. Remember where those Reapers were like a mutated version of vampires that were themselves ate vampires? Like, this is what we're doing. The Rekkles super fan 14-year-old weeb. Remember what I even said, dude? I did that tweet like 3 years ago. Remember what I said? Every single Rekkles fan is just a 14-year-old virgin weeb or whatever. Like, mate, how on the money was I? I saw the future, bro. I looked through a fucking portal into the future of 2024. Like, that is who his fans are now.
Maybe T1 will just rebrand. You know, TSM said they're coming back. It's gonna turn into TSM1 with Rekkles at support for the ultimate worst fan base of all time.
Metal it.
Convenient that, hey Thorin, the new League of Legends season starts in less than 2 months. Have you heard anything about TSM yet?
Mate, I think, no joke, that I actually think for real that might have just been a lie. I think what they did is this, Monty. I think they just put that thing about how they were going to buy the LPL slot to like make it so you didn't give up hope completely. And this is the way to like you said, now they just quietly left out the back door. And everyone has only sort of realized now, like, wait a minute, so they're gone completely. It's like, essentially, it seems like it, right? Like, surely if they were buying an LPL slot, even just for name rights, it would be out by now. Like, there's not even been a leak. There's nothing. As far as I can tell, they're just gone, aren't they? It's over. Peace. Sayonara. See you later.
You would have thought they would have made some announcement.
When I even said that out loud there, Monty, spoiler, like, you'll find out later what I'm on about, guys. But like, when I even said sayonara, I remember that whack-ass bit in Con Air. Where he says that to like Cyrus the Virus, or like sayonara. It's like, because I did just rewatch that the other day. It's great. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I was smiling the entire time for 2 hours, basically. It was great. I was loving it.
By the way, go to the LFN Culture channel and watch Foreplay.
It'll be coming in a few weeks.
Yeah, where we are in our 90s action arc right now. So if you like Face Off, Mission Impossible, Total Recall, and Con Air, then you will like our shows on that. You will like our shows on that. All right. You know, take a quick break, and then we'll go into some fan questions.
Let's do it.
All right. We'll see you in a couple, guys.
Right, we're back for the last segment of the show, which is, as always, viewer questions when we have time. Obviously, now that Worlds is over, we can devote more time to answering your questions. If you don't know, one of the best ways you can support us at Last Free Nation, aside from consume the shows, like, subscribe, all that jazz, and potentially patronize sponsors like we mentioned earlier, like Liquid IV, LFN, code 20% off for the Liquid IV products in North America or wherever they ship to. But also you can subscribe to our Discord. So you go to the Last Free Nation Discord. If you subscribe there's a special channel that you can ask questions in, and then we obviously pick the best ones and answer them potentially in a humorous and or informative manner.
All right. Up first, what are some of your favorite / best TV shows or movies that relies mostly on good / clever dialogue, but not much action? For example, like True Detective Season 1 or Deadwood. I love True Detective Season 1. I thought it was great. Did Deadwood really rely on most on dialogue? I guess it did for the most part. Like low action shows.
More like, I would say it's more like he means like character development maybe for Deadwood, you know. There's a lot of action in that though. The people getting killed and fucking lynched and all sorts of shit. Come on,
I don't know. I mean, even Deadwood, they're like running around chasing a serial killer. So or True Detective rather.
Oh, True Detective, yeah.
Yeah, they're running around chasing the serial killer. I don't know. What shows have had really strong dialogue?
I mean, the obvious one for me is Seinfeld. The whole show's basically dialogue and linguistic inventions and playing around.
I mean, The Wire is another one that famously has really good dialogue and character interactions. And there's not like, I mean, it's more realistic, I suppose, action as opposed to really over the top, you know, action movie action. So there'd be.
By the way, a lot of comedy shows are going to fit this. Like that British one, I always tell people about, Peep Show, the one where you see it from the POV of the character. All the classic ones, by the way, basically all language, like fucking Blackadder or whatever. It's all just like silly jokes and ideas, isn't it?
What are each of your favorite music genres? And while we're at top 3 artists, I don't know if I have a top 3 artists. As for genres, I listen to so many different genres. I don't know, man. Yeah, I listen to practically all musical genres. Like I listen to electronic music, I listen to classical, I listen to opera.
What are your biggest? What do you think the biggest you listen to are?
Probably like.
Isn't yours like folk music or something weird like that?
Yeah, folk, bluegrass, rock and roll. Probably the ones I listen to the most. But I listen to tons of different stuff. So I don't really.
My main genres are probably drum and bass, post rock, 70s rock. By the way, I've actually got a quick anecdote I can tell you, Monty, because I actually recently went to a post rock gig for one of my favorite bands ever, since it's the topic we're being asked about. There's a group called Explosions in the Sky. It's a very good post rock group.
Sure, yeah.
And basically, when I went to this concert, you would think for real, the universe is just trying to test me at this point in time, Monty. In fact, I'm choosing to perceive it that way, and everything's a chance to level up, right? Because during this gig, anyone who knows this style of music might know famously the post-rock genre is often described as music that's like this. It goes quiet, quiet, loud, 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 quiet, quiet, loud, loud. Because the whole thing is they're very long songs that go almost orchestral. They go through like slow build-ups into like all the instruments into very, very loud a crescendo, and then back down and you build back up again, right? So as a result, that type of music, right, already is quite like sort of like a noise offensive to some degree, Monty. And then also, if you know this particular band, when they do a live show, they even do it where, because their music often at the end like descends into what sounds like untuned, like static, essentially, like, you know, guitar just doing a sound going through like Hendrix style. What they'll do is they do it almost like how a DJ would. They'll use that so that there isn't like a break between the songs. They'll sort of like lead into the next song from doing it, right? So what I'm getting at is, if you went to this gig, I'm not exaggerating, there might have been like 10 total seconds during the gig you could ever have heard another person inside this venue. During one of these moments, early on, like after like 2 songs, Monty, when like for a moment, just a brief moment, the band's like not doing it very loud, they sort of go into the next song. I turn to someone who I'm at the gig with and just say something like, oh, it's quite interesting they play the old stuff. And a guy in front, this will blow your mind, a guy in front of me turns around, and some like fucking like 55-year-old boomer guy turns around and goes, And then, like, this is what's mental, though, Monty. Except if you know me, I just went, I'm not fucked, mate. I don't give a fuck, right? And here's what's mental, though. Not only did he turn around and do that to me, but that was the only 5 seconds of the whole fucking set you could ever have heard another person speak. Like, when he actually did that, like, this is why I told you, it's like the universe is teaching me how to overcome these issues and not to let these things bother me. Because in that moment, I actually did tank it, believe it or not. Even though, obviously, it's like, why, of all the people in this whole room, right? If he turns around and does that to almost anyone else, there's no problem, right? And that's the only second as all like, hey, I need to hear this 1 second. Like, oh, mate, the whole thing. But I was just like, I actually mastered Zen in that moment. I became a mountain that was calm and still. And I allowed the emotion of the clouds to pass away from me. And only I remained fucked in that moment. And I didn't.
I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of you.
You have to understand, I wanted to go full Anakin in like fucking Star Wars and destroy them completely and kill all the Sand Raiders, but I didn't. I held it in that moment. So anyway, there you go. There's one of our favorite bands.
He's learning discipline.
There you go. What a ridiculous scenario, I know.
With where the offseason is so far, mainly for LCS and LEC, since LCK and LPL were busy competing in Worlds. But if you want to throw in both of them and your answers, go for it. For both Monte and Thorin, what moves in the offseason have you guys liked/disliked so far? And what moves would you have wanted to see hypothetically that didn't happen, or I guess hasn't happened yet? Yeah.
Is there a big one that you'd love to see?
I mean, I honestly think it's like disappointing that neither Licorice nor Revenge is going to be a starting top laner in the LCS next split, because I think both of them are actually quite good. Licorice wasn't, especially Licorice, he was first team All-Pro in summer? Now he just doesn't have a team. What the fuck? Like, the league is just objectively worse. I'm really surprised that Revenge wasn't picked up either. Especially because I've talked about how I think, he's been on bad teams, but he's often been the best parts of some of these bad teams. And it is intriguing to see that there wasn't like an import top laner. Like, I kept saying I would have loved to have seen Wonder on this iteration of Cloud9. I think that would have been amazing. I think Wonder is the perfect player for that team.
No, actually, I was going to say that one. I actually think that would have been a banger pickup. Like, that would actually make a really strong Western team that could potentially do something cool. Like, because you think about it, one thing I'm sick and tired of is like, that would actually have real pressure from all the lanes. Like, that's the one thing Cloud9 hasn't had that for a couple of years now. I think another one, look, since we're doing hypothetical ones, it looks like this isn't happening, so I'll say it now. I personally wanted to do a pairing where you take like players that are really good that just aren't together. Like I would love like Larson to get like El Yoya or something like that. Like, I think that would be a fucking banger matchup. So there's loads in Europe, if people don't know. Like, spoiler, once that off season ends, you will see what an abomination Europe is. Like, I was memeing earlier, but like that's almost true. It really does feel like every Spanish team just rammed the team full of Spanish players, whether they're known or good or not, and every French speaking team just rammed them full of Belgians. And fucking, like, the joke is if someone was Swiss, they'd be in the fucking league too now. So it's ridiculous, mate. Like, they've gone so cynical in Europe, it's mental. Because the thing is, in Europe, here's the difference, Monty. Right, in America, you have to just straight up lie to people's faces and tell them like, no, NRG chose to invest in North American talent because they believe in American thing. No, they didn't. Those are cheap players that you yourselves have pointed out were in academy the last few years. Like, those aren't expensive players. So, but the difference is when you lie like that in America, it's obvious. In Europe, you just now, the problem is the way they're going to mask esports winter is obvious, Monty. You take the whole Carmine Corp thing of like, wow, they've got all these crazy French fans activated. And you make like, no, what I'm doing is I'm building my brand and my domestic fan base. And then that's like the smoke screen where you just recruit all the cheap players from the RLs that come from your country. It's just like a clever way to market, essentially cheapening out of the roster. Because, spoiler, that's not a joke, by the way. There are going to be some massive names, by the sounds of it, won't have teams in Europe. I mean, you've already seen Trimby. Trimby's already on the record. He's not going to be playing. Yeah, there's one. I've heard some of the... By the way, it's implied people like Yellowsang might not even be on teams. We'll have to see how it shakes out. So there's some big fucking names that aren't going in there, mate. And my problem is this. I don't mind if you take out like a smaller player who was like whatever, Monty. You can't get rid of people like Hillesang. Like, even if you don't think he was at his top level, he's still at least LEC level, for fuck's sake. He's still a fucking good player. Like, there's no way he shouldn't even... He should be on the ERL team. That's ridiculous to me. So I can't believe some of these cynical ass moves. It's going to make the offseason suck, unfortunately.
This is definitely a very weird offseason. Like... It's strange that in LCS and LEC, we are seeing very good players just left without teams for very different reasons.
Yeah.
I don't understand a lot of the decisions that are going in the LEC, and the LCS players were just hung out to dry by the teams. So,
and by the way, even though we don't know yet what happens, the notion that, and it seems quite certain, that JDG won't keep that lineup together is just a bomber. Like, I know it's money and all that stuff, but like, dude, I wish I could see
Does
another
suck a
year of
lot.
that team. It would be fucking awesome, wouldn't it? Imagine, by the way, T1 got it. Imagine they get a chance to run it back next year and potentially win everything. Who the fuck
Dude,
wouldn't tune in for that?
the rematch would be amazing.
Imagine if they met T1 at MSI with similar lineup, bro. That would be the shit, wouldn't it? That'd be amazing.
During the league offseason, would you guys consider doing any Brood War content? Would be really helpful to have a lot of the stories retold, since a lot of them are getting lost to time. Perhaps a recasting of big tournaments where you talk about the important matches, analyze the gameplay, and talk about their historical significance. That, my friend, is a massive project. I do agree, though, that it would be neat to see some sort of this is stuff like, if we had more money to create more documentary content, it would be really great, because I think one of our duties at LFN, and one of the things we want to do with this company, is like actually put down some of that history, right? Because I agree, it is getting lost to time, and that sucks. And I'm sure a lot of people who were back in like Team Liquid back in the day, who are watching those matches, would be happy to help us do it as well, because they care about the kind of the legacy of that game. But it's just very hard to find the time to do that, right? Especially when there's not, unfortunately, like, there's not a guaranteed audience for that kind of content.
Like, put it this way, I think you've nailed it. When he says, like, analyze the gameplay. No, here's the problem with that is that would be the most insane, like, waste of our time possible. Like, it will never, ever be viewed. No one knows enough about, like, the intricacies of Brood War meta. But, like Monty says, you can make some amazing documentaries. If you just want to tell the story of Savior or Flash or fucking Beast or something, then you could do it awesome. And, like you say, there's so many Western talking heads that would immediately essentially just say yes, that they're not involved at the high level of esports aside from this. So I think a lot of them would even be happy to be just contribute, basically, right?
Or, you know, they're doing different stuff. Like Hotbid is kind of behind the scenes at Team Liquid right now, but, you know, there are people like this who do have a history within StarCraft Brood War that would be interesting to talk to about it. But
shout out to the pleb who goes, you'd need Artosis and Day 9 to do it justice. Why would I, dickhead? They weren't the casters in Brood War, you fucking clown. You didn't watch Brood War, so maybe don't tell me what Brood War was. Why would I need two American fucking shitter players at Brood War to tell me, who watched Brood War, what happened in Brood War? I wouldn't. You need Day 9 to do that. So tell you what, fuck off to Day 9's Twitch channel, subscribe to him, and go, hey, Day 9, in that fake studio that looks like your old room, can you tell me a bunch of shit about Brood War, with a game that you abandoned instantly for StarCraft 2 because you didn't give a fuck about it? Not triggered or anything. It's all fine. It's not triggered. It's all cool. It's all good.
Yeah, actually, Tasteless did.
Artosis, I will say, I do love Artosis.
Yeah, he's great. Tasteless did more real Brood War casting, because the GOM TV Brood War tournaments, that was before Tasteless and Artosis were a duo.
He picked the wrong brother. It should have been Tasteless. He picked,
He actually casted more Brood War. But yeah, look, I think that the content would just have to be made in a way that people who don't know about Brood War would want to view it. And so it has to be more story-based stuff rather than analysis. But
that's what I say. The obvious angle you would take is you would even take things that have like different flex than just esports. Like, for example, the Savior one's great because you could even make it like, did you know this player was a champion, but then he was indicted by, like, and then also like on the Flash one, you'd go before Faker, there was another Korean prodigy player who won it. Like there's so many ways you'd set it up. It didn't have to be about the game, would it? No, it wouldn't need to be.
Yeah, we would need some pretty big resources to pull something like that off, though. And they're also, I think it's hard to pre-sell that to a sponsor, because there's no guarantee that a documentary series about StarCraft Brood War is going to be as big as documentaries we could create about current esports. You know what I mean? It's tough. I would love to do it, though. I would love to do it. If it turns out that Faker isn't actually a robot that plays in Worlds Finals for the rest of League of Legends' existence, what do you see happening after his retirement? What will be his next move, and what will happen to T1, to the pro scene as a whole, and how do you think that Riot will honor his legacy?
By the way, you do know earlier on, I did just list off how all those players had a globe. And in the case of Zeus and Keria, are actual real contenders for like best player at their whole role. Because the thing I do despise about this whole faker narrative, Monty, is the notion, which is implied with how people bill it. They make it sound like a 1v1 sport, mate. Like they make it sound like if Faker signed with Frederick Brion tomorrow, that he would also be in Worlds Finals next year. Like they actually make it for real sound like it's just him the whole time. So like, what's he saying is if Faker isn't in the final, then what was the rest of the question? Who else is or something?
No, if Faker, what do you see happening after Faker's retirement? Like, what do you think? I think he'll move to coaching.
Plausible, yeah. I mean, by the way, he just seemed like a nerd who's just a lifer in League. So
yeah,
if League's still going, I imagine he'll just keep doing it.
What will happen to T1? Well, T1 actually as an org has been very good about keeping old T1 players who are no longer playing professionally in management or coaching. So I would think that he probably just stays with T1. He's very valuable to their brand, and he certainly could coach a team. He already is coaching the team. He just happens to be playing in it at the same time. How do I think Riot will honor his legacy? I think Riot does a very bad job of honoring players' legacy, so I wouldn't hold out hope even for Faker.
Well, here's the joke. I'll give a facetious answer to that question, Monty. What'll happen is Faker on that English language Twitter account will do a tweet like, I retire from League of Legends play. And then Mark Merrill will at the Faker account on Twitter and say something to the effect of, you're welcome for having a career in that free video game I invented. That would be the most perfect on the nose Riot one of all time. Like he did to Dom, if people don't know the joke I'm referencing. That's what Mark Merrill did to Dom, which the reason I always reference in case people don't get it is because out of those two people, it should be Mark Merrill on his hands and knees kissing the feet of someone like Dom, that Dom has essentially for free tirelessly promoted Mark Merrill's game and kept it interesting. Like, but the joke is people like Riot and Mark Merrill really do think like Faker owes them a debt of gratitude, you know, not the other way around. Like they never get it, mate. They never will. They never.
I mean, it's the same shit that that they did to Total Biscuit back in the day when he was the one who.
Classic.
So basically, Total Biscuit was a huge YouTuber at the time in general gaming, and if you got enough signups, and he drove thousands and thousands and thousands of signups, you were supposed to be able to design a champion with Riot. And they basically said after he hit the overwhelming number that they thought no one was ever going to be able to hit, they just rug pulled him and said, nah, you're not going to be able to design a champion.
They just gave him the biscuits or whatever in the game, or whatever the fuck that was, didn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Item.
Which is a bit different from a champion in always got.
Yeah, designing a champion and having input on it. So
also, I'll just say, aged pretty badly considering he's dead now, Riot. That would have been a really beautiful thing you could have actually done for his legacy, wouldn't it? If he'd have had a champion in the game forever. But yeah, well done. Nice one, Riot.
Yeah. Sound. Now that you've been betting for a while, what factors do you consider to make, or what factors do you consider making a better bet? Regular season international tournaments, maybe just Korea because there are less variants? I'm not sure what the question is. Like, how do we make better bets?
I think he's asking. No. I think he's asking like, which is a better like bet to make, like a regular season bet, or do you prefer like international? Like, do you prefer regional like LCK? Or I think he's essentially asking like, what are the safest bets to make? I think is what the question is.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the matchup and where things are going. I think you just have to know the game well and decide where the kind of angles you can get. I mean, we talked a lot about this year about like finding the times where you could bet against T1 because their fans would like mega skew the odds.
Same with Fnatic as well if they're ever good. Like there's a few angles like that you can use. Cloud9 was obviously getting insane odds the whole time. So
right, so we got some good odds like in the first match they played against KT in summary because KT was the better team, etc. So there's angles like that, but it's just about knowing the way that fans tend to move the lines and what teams what the expectations are of.
For me, I would say in general, like the obvious safe bet is like domestic league where you know all the teams and that's like a best of 5 playoff series. That's the safest one you can bet on. But I actually think the best bets, as in if you want some variance and you want to potentially like win a lot of it multipliers, is when is doing BO1 upset picks. Like I think there are a lot. Like there wasn't as many actually end up happening at Worlds, but like at Worlds, I was seeing loads. Because the problem in League, I've always thought is this. In League, for real, one mistake can fuck the whole game up when the Baron goes through the team. So like, I think for me, when you get those odds where it'll be like, fucking like some of the ones where it's Korean versus Western team, Monty, are like fucking 5-1 odds. Like when it's 5-1, that can happen in BO1. I just said it earlier, dude. Team Liquid, one of the worst teams at the tournament, almost beat T1, who ended up winning the bloody Worlds. Like that just shows you how crazy the variance in those BO1s is.
Yeah, I get nervous at some of the internationals though. We talk about this like doing early before if it's a patch like it's at Worlds and it's like 3 patches later and nobody knows what the meta is, including the professional teams themselves. It can be very risky to bet in the early stages of international tournaments because there's always just weird shit that's happening, and good teams can get a temporarily bad read on the meta that they correct like later on in the group stage or whatever. So I tend to stay away from those. Now this is a dangerous question, but I'm going to answer it. Individually, what do you think is the worst terrorist act you could pull off? How would you go about doing so? Well, first off, I would go back in time to when I'm about 25 years old, and I would delete all knowledge of esports from my mind. And what I would do is I would join a very wealthy company, and I would have them purchase a legacy esports brand. I would then be inserted as the CEO of that company with no real working experience or esports experience. I would then reject all outside like expertise of the industry, insist that my way was the best way. Then I would turn myself into the public-facing figurehead of that brand while being extremely petty and claim that everyone else was doing it wrong. Then I would just wait a few years until I lost all my sponsors and got all my employees fired. Therefore, my terrorist act would be destroying a legacy esports brand from within.
Forever, potentially.
Forever.
Just never to return.
That is the worst act of terrorism that I could do. But fortunately, that's never going to happen, so we don't need to worry about it. You have an answer? I'll tell
you an answer I can give you that's not dangerous, which is basically this. I actually think there's an answer, which might sound whack. It sounds like sort of like a human beings with the most dangerous predator of them all. But essentially, the actual real answer, I don't even think is what they want money. They want us to say like 9/11 or something, right? I actually think for real, the most, if you essentially just were a pure misanthrope, the actual most evil thing you could do, unironically, is actually spread an ideology in the world. I think you could do way more harm in limiting people's like potential, their life, their enjoyment, their happiness. Just like the worst ideologies have ruined people's whole lives. You've never met the person who created the ideology. Unironically, I think that actually would be it. You'd try and propagate some really fucked up, like misanthropic worldview about it. So essentially, modern science. See the little switcheroo at the end there, boys. Whatever.
A more revealing question than that of religious belief versus agnosticism or atheism, can that be that of free will versus determinism? It can say a lot of an individual's viewpoints on topics. Do you guys believe in free will determinism or perhaps some layering of different realities? I do think that there's an element of free will, but people are very reluctant to admit the truth, which is that a lot of your behaviors are not even conscious. And the way you react to things is not, it all happens in your subconscious. And people don't like that. But people have a lot of animal reactions to things. And this has been proven time and time again in various studies. People themselves don't even know what they want a lot of the time. Or they say one thing, but when they're actually confronted with a choice, they do something very different.
It drives me crazy because, as you say, unfortunately, especially when they're talking publicly, everyone pretends that we all agree that the norm is that we're all making these decisions completely consciously. And even that fiction that we're all making the best possible decision, which we're obviously not. Like you say, the amount of times that people are just driven by essentially instincts and impulses that they then later use their left side of their brain to retcon why they did it. Like, here's a good reason I did it. But like the problem is people don't realize they're trapped in that cycle because the amount of times, like that, as you say, you made a decision, but actually sometimes you just give into an impulse or an instinct. It's why I've told you one of the things you
just don't like something, and so you don't do it, or you don't like that person, and then you just justify it through X reason later on that really doesn't logically hold up.
Because one of the ones I hate about that's like this, I really despise it as like a canard, is when people say that famous one where they claim that if someone got drunk, for example, Monty, and like, I don't know, beat their wife or said something racist, it's that take that people have that like, oh, whatever you do, whatever you think when you're sober is what you would say when you are drunk. Like the reason that's so inhuman to me as a take is you genuinely are pretending that you yourself, if I gave you a whole bottle of absinthe, would never say anything that went against social norms or was like inappropriate, or you would never like get violent if someone provoked you or did something fucked up. Like it's such I actually think that's a really like, it's such a gaslight position, because surely everyone understands that like like the point we're making, that like essentially to me what happens when someone gets really drunk like that, blackout drunk, is they degrade themselves down to their most base instincts and impulses. That's why they will then do things that actually in the sober light of day might be horrifying to them, you know.
Yep. And not only that, I mean, that's an extreme example, but even your behavior can be influenced by so many outside factors, chemicals in your system, vitamin deficiencies.
I mean,
like God
hormones,
only
love,
knows.
everything. Yeah, everything. The joke is like people don't realize, think about like emotional relationships now. They just skew people's whole lives and throw them for a loop all over the place, innit?
Yeah. So I think there's actually, and even in the question of free will versus determinism, right? A lot of people do things because of social conditioning. Is that free will, or has that outcome been determined by the society in which your mental framework exists, right? Are you doing it because you want to do it, or are you just doing it because of social pressures, which is just determinism at a societal level? I don't think there's a lot of free will, if I'm going to be honest with you.
For me, I think it's more like Monkey Island. I think you just pick from like 3 options every time. You know,
yeah.
There's like a jaunty option, safe option. You know, probably one that's
it's just a video option, game where you have like 3 dialogue.
Basically,
options.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, let's keep going. Hold up, back to the top. Let's see here. I got into League because I watched a Double Lift interview on Machinima where he talked about his backstory of being homeless while trying to be a pro. I was a huge Double Lift fan, and his career was pretty insane from a narrative standpoint. This is true. From being homeless to finally winning a championship through playing through his personal tragedy. However, these days I can't vibe with his streaming / post-Lena pseudo-activist personality and can't root for him anymore. I don't even know what this is. Are you familiar? I have no idea what his streaming person. I don't watch his stream, so.
I assume they just mean the fact that he's just a dickhead. I don't think they mean anything specific. I think they just mean don't like his personality now with Lena's warped him a bit or something.
Yeah, I don't know. With that being said, who would you say, what player / figure in esports would win the lived long enough to become a villain instead of dying a hero award? I mean, most of the people who got caught in gambling scandals, like Life probably in StarCraft, Savior in StarCraft, and who stuck around too long and dimmed their legacy / fan sentiment. All the gambling scandal people in StarCraft, 100%, obviously.
I mean, the real problem is, like, League of Legends, bizarrely, doesn't seem like it actually... like, if I had to pick one, the obvious one when he said that one about dimming the legacy is probably Soaz. Because even though, like, I actually think he was mistreated and he was even one of the better players on his last few teams. Dude, if he just actually did retire after Fnatic, this guy's would have an untouchable legacy. You couldn't even fuck with it. But because of like the Euro misfits in Immortals, I think people do sort of like not remember him that fondly, you know? He doesn't seem to come up in the convos. Like, put it this way, if someone says to you, is Wonder the greatest Western top laner? Even if you say yes, you're supposed to go yes, but Soaz is in the conversation. Like, I don't know if people do that now. I feel like they just default to Wonder on that topic, you know?
Yeah. There aren't that many, though, that I think have aged super badly.
I don't think there's that many villains either, to be fair. Like, who really was a villain that was a hero before? Like, the joke is just people like Nicole Point Jameson, isn't it? Like, I mean, they weren't a real hero. It was kind of fake hype anyway, but there's that sort of shit.
Yeah. Each of you must pick one person.
Maybe you'll find out soon, but let's say maybe Rekkles fits that category.
There you go.
You'll find out soon on that one. You have to find out soon on that one.
Each of you must pick one person from behind the scenes of esports whose work or contribution is amazing or significant to you, but they would have to be someone that the average viewer would never know.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
I mean, the easy one here is just Crisis We. who was the original like lead producer of OGN, who started producing esports in the late 90s and continues to be producing esports to this day. But he basically, created the template for esports production, all of the kind of layouts of shows and run of shows around the old OGN hype videos and the trash talk segments and everything was stuff he created that was very effective. And he's a Korean dude who's just amazing at what he does and is still probably the single greatest producer in esports history.
Like, to me, I think the obvious one, even though some people will go, but I know, like, you didn't fucking spot a career, I can tell you that, is obviously like Kelsey Moser. Like,
Sure.
when I look now, Monty, and I see that people like Ashley Kang have won Journalist of the Year, what a travesty this is, right? Kelsey, her problem was the years when she was going the hardest were the years me and Richard won the titles. So the idea, like, put it this way, if you take all the people who've won Journalist of the Year, she easily could have had one of those. So there's that area she didn't get properly celebrated in. And then when I watch Emily Rand on the broadcast, I just think what could have been. That could have been Kelsey too. They were both similarly, like, not that good on camera initially, both just nerds who were like in the books, had to build up their confidence, build the persona up. Like, so in the same way, I actually think Kelsey could have done the same thing. She could have done whatever she wanted. Like, to me, that's one of those people where, like, to me, they're the backbone of League of Legends. Like, I wouldn't know what I know about League of Legends if I hadn't had a million conversations with these people. I wouldn't know. You know how many people, by the way, who were guests on our shows that I initially found because of people like Kelsey? Because here's the thing people don't know. She always knew, because she had all this network of people, of sources in different countries. She knew, like, for example, Peter Dunn when he was a coach in, like, CB LOL or whatever. And then she would know, like, Veteran when he was just some guy behind the scenes being obnoxious in Europe. And, like, she would know all these people. And so as a result, like, look, in the narrative way, Keria, like, probably 90% of those guests that you like are nobodies, croissant. She was one of the people helping me find these people. So yeah, to me, like, my own experience of League would be like nothing compared if I didn't know these people. So I even though they had a little bit of shine as a public figure, I don't think people really know how pivotal these figures are. Like, to me, that's someone who I put up there with you, Papa Smithy. Like, these are like the fucking, like, the pillars of the game in the West.
Yeah. I don't agree with the take that Zhao Hu would have been the consensus #2 GOAT if he had won Worlds this year. In League, how much are we valuing team accomplishment over individual play? For me, I value Kenyon's 1 hard carry Worlds higher than Bengi's 3 Worlds. I think that's fair. I do too. How much are we going to hold against Rookie that he got griefed for all these years? For Zhao Hu specifically, I don't think he was ever that impressive individually. He's had some impressive times. His early years were on teams where everything revolved around Uzi, and recently his success came on teams where he was not the primary carry and he played more of a supportive/stable role. Yeah, but his consistency is pretty crazy in terms of international success.
The problem they're doing here, Monty, is it's a classic thing. They just try to make Zhao Hu and Doinby like, oh, they're only brains, they have no hands. But it's like, first of all, Doinby, like, was for real the MVP of the league once. And then if you don't know, Zhao Hu, it's more like specific splits. Like, if you go to, like, season 7, I think was the one where he was a bit cracked out in summer or whatever. There's been a bunch of times.
The season he spent in top lane was also pretty good.
He was amazing in top lane. Remember when he used to play Lucian top lane and just carry the whole fucking map? Like, the guy could definitely be a stud. By the way, I do agree, though, the premise, is that a real take? People had that. If Zhao Hu would won, he'd be like the second.
I hadn't heard that one.
Like, is that a real one? That seems a bit far to me.
I think, what we had said is that Zhao Hu is probably the best player to have not won Worlds yet. I think that's fair. That's a fair take, fair. Right? I don't think he's like, if he wins Worlds, I don't think he's like #2 GOAT status behind Faker. I didn't hear that, but maybe some people were saying it.
I mean, I've already said mine a million times. I think if you look at just individual play in mid lane, Rookie is the best player I've ever seen play the game. And if you want to go on like a mixture of longevity, peak, resume, I think Deft has a very strong case too.
Sure.
The problem is, if you're just going to do the ring thing, it's like the NFL one, then yeah, case closed is one person, no discussion. I don't know why you would want to not have a discussion about the best players of all time. Personally, I like to talk about money. I find it fun, It's pretty cool, isn't it? I don't get these like nephews that are like, right, attention. I've called everyone here to discuss the greatest players of all time. It's Tom Brady. End of session. Brilliant. Oh, well, what a great combo we had there. Fucking brilliant. Awesome. Yeah, nice. Glad we did that guy who's 19 years old.
No one can argue with this take. Favorite, I mean, this one's easy for you, Thorin. Favorite Christopher Nolan movie and why?
Oh, man, it's easy. It's The Prestige.
Yeah,
I think that's my favorite film overall.
I think.
I mean, the reason why
I think that's his best.
The real joke is my reason why is exactly why I don't respect the opinion of people who tell me it's not that good a film, because they always say this, Monty. They always say it doesn't make sense. The best thing about that movie is that might be the best scripted movie ever, in my opinion. Like, I think it is actually incredible how well that movie fits together, how it like perfectly to me, there's not even a single plot hole in the movie. It's fucking incredible. Like, actually, and you know this, like the Batman movies he made, I always think have a problem in the third act. This movie's just great the whole way through. There's nothing to dislike. I even think all the performances are banger, straight fire, mate.
Yeah, people. I complain about this because people only remember the good parts of those Batman movies and none of the absolute shit parts. It's really a uneven experience. I do like Inception though. I like Memento. I really liked Oppenheimer as well. I thought it was weird the complaints that people had about Oppenheimer, where they thought it was too long, or the hearings at the end. People didn't like, because I think they wanted it to be. I think that they. Oops, my VPN's trying to update. I think that they wanted to. They really like wanted to have a. They wanted it to be about the atomic bomb and not about Oppenheimer. Which is like, you need the character arc of Oppenheimer.
Probably the Oppenheimer movie is that bloody Oppenheimer guys just did it the whole time.
Well, because people just wanted it to like be the atomic test, and then they dropped the bombs on Japan, and then that's it. Not any of like the years later fallout that occurred, right? With the congressional hearings. But anyway, I thought it was very good. What tips/tricks can I use to spot a wild grifter? I think one of the favorite ones is that they really like to throw out a bunch of popular buzzwords without ever getting specific. So if you hear somebody using a lot of the language around an industry or around a hobby or around a space without ever having referenced their own experiences or having any kind of specific stories to go along with it, that is usually a massive red flag. That is usually, and that is the number one way to tell an esports grifter. It's like it's like when Thorin and I did our last like esports cringe, and we watched that television interview with Nicole LaPointe-Jameson that made no sense whatsoever. It was just a bunch of buzzwords strung together and really didn't even apply to the esports space. It was wild to watch that. I hadn't seen it before. But that's one of the key ways to do it, is that charlatans never actually have any insight. They just provide a very kind of good sounding surface level commentary, but they never dive into any real details or have any of their own stories to tell.
I've got a couple for you. One is they will always claim that what they're doing is the first. So they'll claim like, I am the first esports X. I am the top esports. It's always the first and the best, even though there are nobody that no one's ever heard of. So that's already a massive tell. And then another one, and you'll notice this works almost universally with those dog shit leakers in esports. Watch this tell, and it'll give the whole thing away. The legit ones, because by the way, there are some leakers, by the way, Monty, I've talked to privately and told them like, oh, by the way, this info was wrong on this story. And some of them will even be like, oh, right, yeah, sorry about that. Like, I'll contact the person and I'll put out a retraction. And some of them are just legit. They're actually people who genuinely just didn't, they like had a bad source or they fucked up the execution on it. This is the tell when they're a grifter and they're actually a harmful person who's a leaker, is when someone legit like me or Richard, who, by the way, our resume and body of work is beyond reproach on this topic. I have never published a false piece of information ever in my career. And if I had done, I would have apologized and retracted immediately if I had done it. So when we point out that the person's doing a scam of Monty, like they're not telling the truth, a massive tell is they don't actually defend their point or explain why you're wrong. They just attack you. Because it's a deflection tactic. What they'll do in CS is the worst right now. Because what will happen is there'll be some person who will point out, like, well, you're just making that up, aren't you? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, well, you lick people's asses. And you're like, that's the response. And like actual people trying to be like esports professionals. So just watch how the people like the Wooloos of the world have to attack us when we point out that they're full of shit. Because spoiler, we're right. They're full of shit. They know it and are insecure about it. And it's the only tactic they have left. At that point, they can't actually argue the points of the case because we know they're full of shit. So all they can do is just go, right, well, people don't like Thorin/Richard Lewis. So maybe if I throw some mud at them, that'll distract everyone while I get out the way like a ninja smoke bomb. So there's my tell for you. They say they're the first or the best, or they just attack you when you point out that they're not legit. Haven't you noticed, by the way, that's almost a even though it's a bad tactic, it's almost a universal approach. When the legit people call you out, they always insult you. Why is that the go-to? Like, it's like you always say, why would you antagonize the very people who actually have the skill set to unravel your shit? I don't get it, mate, myself. I'll never get it.
It's also if they spend more time marketing themselves than actually making something. If their entire work output is just like LinkedIn posts and telling other people about the things that they do instead of actually creating work that you can look at, then that's a major flag as well. Where do you think the Season 5 SKT lineup would have ranked amongst the Korean teams in Season 4? I don't think they would have
won.
If
the married team instead played in Season 4 when Samsung White and Samsung Blue were there. Okay.
I don't think they would have won. You guys, that was the reason why that iteration of SK Telecom did so well is because all of the players had scattered not only to other Korean teams, but to a bunch of other Chinese teams. The concentration of talent in 2014 was unreal in Korea. It will never be matched. We will never have that many elite players in one regional league ever again in that few teams. And the fact that Samsung White and Samsung Blue were able to be consistent scrim partners with each other and like develop, kind of like the steel sharpens steel thing, that was so crazy at the time. And I think they would have been good. Obviously they would have done better than in spring and summer than the old version of SKT did, but I think you're really underestimating like how good those Samsung teams were.
I actually think both Samsung teams would beat them, mate. Think about it. White would just smash you early, and then Blue. So SKT Season 5 was the one that would always fight from behind on a goal diff. Good luck fighting fucking Samsung Blue late game if you're behind in the game. They're just going to fucking mop you up. Like, that was when Deft was starting to become really fucking sick.
Yeah, so I don't know. And also, even a lot of the lesser teams, remember that KT Arrows was considered a bad team at the time for winning champions. And even then, they had fucking Rookie in the mid lane, right, before he left. So,
by the way, shout out to whoever at Twitch did implement that feature that shows it's a first-time chatter. Because I treat that as like, ignore, this is a moron. Because like the amount of times that's just like, hey guys, so what do you think about Reggie and Lena? Like, whatever, ignore that. Just ignore that. Keep going. It shouldn't even say first time chatter. It should just say, I remember my first beer. Like, go on. Next question.
Would it be a fun exercise to shadowbox previous worlds, MSIs, and imagine how they would have turned out with double elimination? Sure.
That would be pretty cool. The problem is, though, this gets to a point that I saw Dom made on that clip from like Power Spike or whatever it is, Monty. Dom's right. League of Legends fans philosophically don't think upsets exist. They think every time an upset happens, that actually, like, you put a pin in history and everyone who thought that that team shouldn't win was fundamentally wrong about everything about League of Legends. And this result was 100% inevitable and always going to happen every time. So the real problem we have here is, if you notice, this is one of my biggest frustrations with League, is I love counterfactuals and talking about what ifs and what could have happened in history. But to a fan, Monty, they can barely handle that convo we had earlier about the idea that Gen G should have been in the final. They're like, but they shouldn't because they lost to BLG. It's like, I know that happened. My point is, other things could have happened, and if they played Czechs Notes, a completely different team, they also could have a different result against them. Like, somehow there is a real thing in League specifically where they can't get that through their brain, mate. They can't comprehend.
People don't
like, to them, I'll give you an example, Monty. They can't understand, for example, that DRX simultaneously won 2022 Worlds, but were never the best team at the tournament. They can't. To them, what I've just said is like matter meeting antimatter and just destroys the whole universe. Like that fact meeting their brain, it's over. It's like Oppenheimer. I'm watching a massive shot of a bomb go like this. You know? But sadly, I'm not 2 miles away from them. So. That one does drive me crazy. I love counterfactuals, they're the shit, but like, we've got to be able to actually understand that results can play out.
People also don't understand that matchups exist and that even a worse team could beat a better team because it's a good matchup for that worse team, right?
It's like why in their brain, literally, NRG must be better than G2. They beat them, Monty. Didn't you see them beat them? They must be better. They can't process it. Can't be done. But bizarrely, though, Monty, all those teams beating T1 all year didn't make T1 anything but the best. So T1 fans win again with the paradox. You win as usual, guys. You win.
What makes Worlds 2012 more of a sham? The network issues, the single round robin, the screen behind the players, or it being outdoors? It wasn't all outdoors. It was just some outdoors. I think the single round robin is the biggest sin of 2012 Worlds out of those things. The network issues, nobody played on the network issues. Like, they just played a different day. It sucked a lot and was stupid.
Also the shit where some of the number one seed just skipped to the playoffs. That was pretty whack too. That was another shitter feature back then, if you remember.
Yeah, best of 3 quarterfinals. Another fun one.
And semis.
Yeah, terrible.
It was only the finals best of 5.
Yeah, terrible. So there were a lot of things, but I would say the format was easily the biggest sin.
Like, I've always thought this is why, sadly, Monty, Riot were smart about killing the third party circuit, because you remember this. Dude, IPL 5 was right after Season 2 Worlds. And famously, because the format's like 100 times better, everyone to this day used to still cite IPL 5 as their favorite tournament ever. And so I always thought that actually just shows that, like, dude, if there'd have been a real third-party circuit and then, like, Riot events would have been memed on. They actually, it was like information, like, what would you call it? Like, control that allowed them to seem like they were doing a great job all these years. They were just doing whatever. It was like the most basic minimum tournament.
Yep. The last Free Nation is slowly...
I think it's the funniest though. The one about the stage cutting the wire is probably the best one, though. Let's be real.
That's the funniest part.
That wins every time.
The last Free Nation is slowly building the true safe haven for esports fans, each day bringing its own unique challenges and experiences. Shipwrecked refugees and treasures aplenty wash up on its shores. Hopefully. Will the last Free Nation give shelter to past enemies should they show remorse for going against them? Or will they be exiled? What would those people have to do in order to be welcomed into the last Free Nation?
Problem is, if they mean people we don't like, that's different from enemy to me. If someone's actually an enemy, like in general, for example, I usually define my enemies as people who have an intent of harm towards my career or my life. So actually, someone like that, spoiler, obviously, I would never work with them under any circumstances. If it's just someone I like mildly dislike, as long as they like apologized and/or were like improved whatever they did that I disliked, it wouldn't be a problem. Like, I'll give you an example. Look, I don't think this would ever happen. That's why I'm actually going to throw it out there. But like, I actually do enjoy some of Azael's work, for example. I think sometimes he can do a pretty good job. He did a pretty good job on semis and finals. Like, but he's not someone who's ever going to appear on our content. But like, he hasn't done anything against me. So like, I wouldn't be against him doing a show if he wanted to. I'm not against that notion.
I would welcome Azael. I think he's good. But I think a lot of this stuff is like, look, we are petty. We're not above that. I think that if it was, what if it was Slasher, Thorin? If Slasher publicly apologized, nope.
I mean, first of all, he won't. He's actually repeatedly privately had conversations. And then everyone tells him just to apologize publicly. And he's such a rat. His whole take's like, yeah, but then what if he doesn't apologize back? It's like, so it already shows he's not real. No, the problem with that one is this, Monty. He's crossed the line. He's actually literally repeatedly tried to have... Here's the thing, Monty. He didn't just try to hurt my reputation. He tried, for example, to have me fired from an ESL event I was about to work. So what you've done there is you've taken my job, my dream job, even getting to be on broadcast. By the way, someone like Slasher desperately wanted to be on esports broadcasts. You're taking the best part of my dream job and trying to ruin it because you had a minor personal falling out with me. You can't ever come back from that, mate. Like, someone like, at that point in time, you'd have to actually like save me from a burning fire, like fucking nick me millions of dollars. You're gonna have to do so many things. At that point, what's the point in either of us wasting our time? Like, just go on with your life, mate. Just go on with your life, you know.
Yeah, but I think for the most part, you know, most people are welcome to do LFN work. We don't have to agree with everybody. I think the concept of it is to have a, you know, we're not a monolith. Like the pirate metaphor is, and the pirate imagery is very much there. Like, it is kind of it's a bunch of very different people on a boat together, right? It's not a uniform military order.
I'll even say it this way. This might sound like a weird way to phrase it, but I think it's worthwhile making this statement. I wouldn't even be against, Monty, someone having a podcast on our network where they themselves purely voluntarily choose to express woke ideals that I don't agree with. As long as it's not like the network has to do it or like we have to do it. As long as it's just their opinion and it happens to go along with their work. As long as it's not a show I'm on, I don't care. Do it. Yeah, it's fine by me. As you say, we're not monolithic in that sense. We're not trying to do what, like that's to this day, hear the stupidest gaslighting of all time, Monty's, where they tell me, Thorin, that I can't handle anyone else having a different opinion. I don't think anyone has put more videos onto the internet discussing other people's opinions that he doesn't agree with than me ever in the history of this industry. So, like, the idea that we, like, you only bring people who agree with you. Like, first of all, the joke is we barely agree with our fucking co-hosts on some of these shows. Like, half of the dynamic of these shows is roasting each other. So I've always thought that was a weird one, because to me it's the opposite. I like great convos. Right. The reason I love people like LS is he's going to give me a mad analogy about fucking anime or some shit, isn't he? It's not going to be something I agree with.
I also just think that LFN is intended very much to be a more direct and authentic vector for our talent, and so I don't really care mostly what people's opinions are, because the whole point of this is to give them an opportunity to express them in a method and in a place where they're not censored like they are on broadcast, so they feel they have to do a certain thing. So people having a diversity of opinions is not really a problem.
The real sad thing about LFN is just that we weren't able to do it until so late in the game. Like, if we could have done this 10 years ago, obviously the point is people like Kelsey, they'd have their own show on the network. Emily Rand would have her own shit about pathing with Korean jungle. We'd have had all of them, ideally. Like, China Talk would have been on here. The dream, actually, if I knew what I knew now, would have been to do this years ago, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it just
build up the whole thing.
It just wasn't possible years ago because people didn't believe that videos were podcasts until Joe Rogan convinced them otherwise. And that was our biggest problem, was that our content was behaving like podcasts, but we couldn't get podcasting advertising rates onto it. It's a very strange issue. But now that's been fixed, so we can actually do it. As a fan, I enjoy seeing Easter eggs that are really symbolic and provide a rich narrative when used in content, like the Bonjour Thrones and Faker's OGN videos, sure, and yeah, previously as well, and in the recent Worlds teasers. What are the other Easter eggs that are similar to the Bonjour Thrones? I don't know if there's been one that's as pervasive as that one. Also, what concepts would you do for Simple, since ESL did a piss-poor job during the 10 years of CSGO? I mean, I wish I could be in charge of the next 10 years of hype videos for esports, so you could actually create a symbolic language like the Bonjour Throne. Because the thing about the chairs, the Bonjour chairs, which goes back to Brood War, is that it was imagery that was built up over. This has been imagery that's been built up for like 20 years at this point in time, right? So you need a lot of time in order for that to really hit home.
I mean, there's two angles I have for this. One is I already think every Western esport should implement what Korean Brood War did, which is when you won an OSL or an MSL, you got a badge that you could put onto your uniform that showed how many championships you'd won. So if you were Nada or Flash, you had 6. Yours looked like you were a fucking general in the military. And if you were a guy who had 1, then you had 1. So it was, first of all, to ball away to show your legacy. And then the other sad thing, if people don't know, for Counter-Strike is, dude, we had one of the coolest, unique lore things ever in Counter-Strike, and Valve stopped doing it, which is when they did those graffitis inside the maps, where when it was an epic moment from a major, they would graffiti onto the map itself an image somewhere on the map that referenced like the Cold Zero jumping AWP shot, the Olaf Meister burning in the Molotov on Overpass. And then what they did is they just randomly abandoned it and stopped doing it. So I actually, Simple has one, if people don't know, the Fallen 1v2 against Fnatic on Cash. I thought that was a very cool one, because it's unique to Counter-Strike, and it does what I love, which is you just commemorate the greatest moments ever. Like, anyone who's playing that map, even in matchmaking, if they see that, if they go, what is that? Someone's going to just tell them that is the moment where Simple did the 1v2. That's an awesome sort of like unspoken language to build into the game. I think they should do more shit like that, personally. I think it would be dope.
Agreed. Yeah. But there aren't that many other Easter eggs, I think. And I wish we had more.
I can't think of any, at least.
The problem is that that requires really long-term vision around storytelling and creating an entertainment product. And either in Counter-Strike, it's very hard to do because of multiple tournament operators and because people are constantly like going in and out of business. So it's hard to create that long-term vision. And then the developers, frankly, just don't care. Like, the developers are like, fuck it, ship another, Riot's like, ship another Ari skin. They're not going to spend a bunch of resources in order to
I've got a small Easter egg from League that actually a lot of people didn't know this detail. It was actually like confirmed in my interview with this player. So if people don't know, the champion Thresh, the name is based on the guy who was the original like dual champion in Doom and Quake.
Oh, really?
From the 90s. Yes, he actually apparently knows some of the guys like Mark Merrill or something. I can't remember if it was Mark Merrill or Brandon, but like one of those, he actually like knows them, and he said that they actually told him they did name the champion after him. It's an interesting piece of trivia, right? And if people don't know, he was essentially like the dual game champion, like Fatality, if people know him as well. Like, he was one of those Rafa, it was that sort of a vein of game. And so he was the original Michael Jordan of esports. He's the first player ever called the Michael Jordan of esports. So it's kind of cool that he has like a champion that's still used to this day in a game. Not in competitive play, sadly, but whatever. Still one of the great champions of all time, though, Fresh.
To confirm Thorin's suspicion, I asked my Korean mother what would make her more proud. Me being a top esports pro that makes $10 million a year, or a doctor slash lawyer.
Or a doctor slash B by any chance?
Or a doctor slash lawyer that makes $500,000. And without hesitation, she instantly replied with doctor slash lawyer. Of
course, that's easy. That's a slam dunk right there.
Can you please explain this madness? And would most Western parents give the opposite answer?
The giveaway is this, Monty. The giveaway is how he had to construct the question to give himself a chance. Notice how, Monty, when he said, I would be a top professional, he couldn't stop there. He had to go with $10 million. So what he showed there is there's no status involved with being an esports pro relative to something like doctor. If you say doctor, the joke there, by the way, is you could have said, I'll esports pro with $10 million and not even say the salary, just go to doctor, and they would take doctor anyway, because doctor, they understand. This is the thing people don't get. These parents aren't wrong. 99.99999% of the people won't make it. And so if you actually did, look, it's a false dichotomy. Your choice isn't or become a successful doctor. Not everyone's going to make that job either. But if you do make that the choice, it's an easy choice for me. I would have my kid be a doctor. Doctor is a real job, I understand, that will exist for a long time, that has a skill set that once you've gotten to a certain level is acknowledged and has societal status. By the way, here's a random aside reason that no one would think about as a parent, but it is a real reason to make a kid be a doctor, not a game player. Dude, you don't get the societal status of doctor literally helps you get a better spouse in life. Like, loads of women want to marry a doctor. Again, if you say to a woman, do you want to marry an esports pro? You better be coming with that $10 million thing right after the end of that sentence too, mate. Because that's also another one that no one's stopping with. And I'll see, here's the thing, he's an esports pro. Well, I don't need to know anymore. Set up the date. Like, no, I need to know the $10 million. He's not weird. He actually understands what fucking body spray is. You know, basic things, guys.
Yeah, there are signals. Like, if you are able to get to that advanced degree in education, you have to have a certain.
You can do anything, right?
Yeah, it implies that you probably are a pretty relatively put together human being, whereas esports pro definitely doesn't guarantee that, guys. So I get it. I get it.
Oh, so even though this joke doesn't actually make sense, it's like a lot of jokes, it's facetious, Monty. It is a great joke. There's a joke where someone said to their Asian parent who was like really demanding, they said to them like, oh, but when I finish my degree, like, because you think about how long it is to do all medical school. They were like, when I finish all my degrees, though, I'll be 29 years old if I become a doctor. They'd be like, yeah, but you're going to become 29 years anyway. You may as well be a doctor as well. Which is like, that doesn't actually work because you did waste your whole life. But that is almost their mentality. It's like, you may as well just do it, right? Just do it. Because I do hate that, by the way, that to this day, like, I'll give you an example. I saved a comment, I'll probably do a Thorin versus Reddit on, Monty, that would tilt you off the face of the earth. One of the real reasons someone on Reddit, this was a mega upvoted comment, speculated that Faker had so much success relative to all the other Korean pros. It will blow your mind. This person speculated it's because Faker comes from a poor background while he assumes the rest don't.
No,
as far as I know, the majority of them do. The majority of them are just poor guys. Of course. I mean, the joke actually, by the way, the reason I bring this up is actually the problem is there might even be a faker we don't know about, but the joke is he is off being a doctor in Korea. He never played fucking video games. That's the real travesty of Korean esports. Is like a lot of them don't go this route because it isn't actually like heralded until you make it to the top. So the sad thing is the amount of talent we probably miss, or in Korean military. Think about that. That must have taken so many players over the years who've never got their shit, you know.
Or who had to, maybe were players that didn't develop as quickly, but would have developed if they hadn't gone to the military, right? Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Do you think that if T1 had won all the finals they got second place in, that it would have created a community/fan vibe similar to that of when it looked like the Warriors might just win every NBA title and almost did for a decade? I mean, the dynasty we would be talking about with this T1 roster would be bonkers if they had won all those finals. Especially
because here's the thing as well, Monty. It's not like they would have won like JDG almost did. They wouldn't have won and every player was the best. I think the coolest thing would have been that it was a team effort. That it was like things like defying the meta or how Faker played uniquely or what they did with Keria. I think that would even be like a very cool story.
No, don't worry. All the fans would have told us that they were all the best at their position.
Oh, they would, of course. Of course.
Yeah. Don't worry about that.
By the way, I will also say it is now the most cursed and or KT thing of all time. That at the end of the summer split, KT got all their team, all LCK, and then T1 won Worlds. By the way, this is the real domino. The domino is this. KT chooses T1 in the playoffs of summer. Last domino, T1 wins Worlds. Like, what is that? What is that?
This is the KT
Why is
experience.
KT like this? I know
it's just the KT experience. What can you say?
Because here's the problem. It is like a roller coaster, Monty, but one of those ones where everyone dies at the end. Like it's never a nice ending, is it? You don't arrive safely at the destination. You still die and lose hope.
What are your favorite OGN/LCK opening introductions? Oh, like the hype videos, the hype intros. Okay. My favorite one was the one when all the players came back in 2017. I thought that one was fucking amazing. So my favorite one in League of Legends is when like Marin came back and there's a shot of him and Faker looking at each other. And they had all of the players who had gone to China in 2015 returning. So it was like Deft and Mata. Yeah, all those guys. And then they also, that one was also after the Rocks Tigers broke up. And so they had the shot of all 5 members of the Rocks Tigers in their new uniforms because they had split into all those different teams. That one's my favorite. It was the spring intro.
My favorite, you can look it up now, is from summer 2013, and it's the one where you will remember that they have Flame and Mad Life, and they do the Blaze and Ice thing for the CG one, where they both appear on screen, and it's the one with, even though it does have like obnoxious like dubstep music, like, but it is just like, it's so slick, the actual like creation. Like I actually think that the CG elements work pretty well in that one. It doesn't look awkward unlike the others.
Yeah, that one's fun. Another shit stomp world finals, and wondering how JDG would have fared in a rematch versus T1. I was thinking, what else we have missed out over the years to not having double limb bracket? It was the same question as before, basically. What are some of the storylines, matches, and rematches you have liked to have seen? I mean, 2018 KTIG is the most obvious.
By the way,
one.
this would be a good off-season show topic. We could just run through all the worlds and just like shadow box certain great matchups, or think stylistically what would be cool. So, we could do that, maybe.
Hilariously, I've been talking about doing VOD reviews of all the world finals on my stream during the off season. So after I do that and I refresh my memory a bit, I think that would be a fun piece of content to do for sure. Also, I mean the T1 Rocks Tigers semifinal, that one was a fucking banger. Would have loved to have seen that one again. And we will do the format explainer one, because I do think that was a good idea for a video, just explaining why the format is bad in one place that could be referenced until the end of time. Has the T1 org created a toxic culture where their fans are encouraged to send trucks? Why is no one else calling them out? I mean, they're not helping themselves.
It does make that look like it worked, Bonnie, that they then did win Worlds. I'm just saying. So that does sort of encourage people to do it again, surely, you know.
I think T1 is not, they are just like Fnatic. They are too lenient with their crazy fans. And instead of telling them that this behavior is inappropriate, they will apologize to these fans in very weird ways. And I think that just creates it creates more negative feedback for them rather than just being aggressive against crazy people. So I would not do it that way. I also think that they intentionally did like a lot of K-pop style marketing, which then caused people to treat them like a K-pop group, which is terrible. And even K-pop groups should not be doing that. That level, that kind of fandom is just highly toxic. So I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, that unfortunately though, Monty, what you've just nailed at the end there is why they won't do anything about it. Is like if you notice the K-pop people who run the management, who runs those groups, they actively encourage this shit and work along with the fan clubs, just like you've seen Sam Matthews do, etc. So like the problem is, unfortunately, in the current climate of esports, people aren't going to say anything that goes against any fan. And also, I'll add this in as well. I also do think there are a lot of unhinged people who are parts of those fan bases where if you at all castigate a different fan, they'll act like you hated on them and then they'll get like butthurt on their behalf. So I also think it's unfortunately, like I would do it myself, but I do think it's a very dangerous game for any team to play where you seem like you're telling a fan off or something, you know, even though I agree. I think you should do it just to set the standard, you know. Like, for example, it's not like you have to tell them all they're idiots, but like I would absolutely have made it very clear if I was a T1 official that like under no circumstances ever attempt, when you hire these trucks, send your message, but don't ever imagine you're like, for example, like intimidating us physically or implying that, you know, you're threatening us in any, like I would never stand for a single thing like that. That's why I give the example of Sam Matthews and Fnatic. Like I think sometimes he has absolutely just leaned into like the absolute worst nutters who were his fans. It's like, it's one thing to have access to fans. You don't encourage the bad elements though. Come on, mate. Come on. Not least because for all you know, I'll even say this as well. It's not just your players. What if one of your stupid ultra fans attacks some other player or like, oh, we need some fucking Monica Seles shit, Monty. I'm amazed that's never happened yet. Like some lunatic fan just going out and killing someone or fucking attacking them or something. Like all you need to do is fuck someone's wrist up and that might be the whole result change. Like we're just lucky that's never happened in esports, thankfully.
Yep. Agreed. After the news that Golden Guardians won't be in the LCS next year from a Licorice tweet, I had a quick look in the contract database. All of Licorice, River, Gory, Stixay, and Huhi are contracted through the end of 2024. How can Golden Guardians opt out of their contracted spots while they still have players under contract? What happens to their player contracts? I have agreed with your takes that players have been the major winners through the lifetime of the LCS, but this does seem kind of unfair. Well, first off, River's already off the team, I believe. They traded him, right? And as for the rest of them, there's nothing to be contracted to anymore. Like they're dissolving the team.
The issue is, I'm sure there is someone, Monty, in theory, you could potentially try and sue. But again, who the fuck's going to do a years-long law? You know what I mean?
Are you going to sue the Golden State Warriors? Here's the other thing, is that I would imagine that Golden State Warriors is probably paying them a termination fee. I would think that
it'll be like a golden handshake or something, right?
If I had to guess, I think they probably presented them with a deal that said, sign this thing, you're going to get X amount of dollars, and we agree that this contract is terminated, right? And your other choice is trying to fight a multi-billion-dollar company in a court. So most people are just going to take the money and move on with their lives. But also, we don't know what provisions are in that contract. There might be a clause in the contract that terminates if the team fails to operate or the league fails to run, right? That would be a pretty normal, I would think, clause to have in there, like some sort of force majeure clause around that. But yeah, I imagine they probably didn't get nothing. I think they probably got some money. Is there any
and then another obvious thing you could throw in, Monty, is like a bit like the AG angle. Maybe they also told them something like, we'll cover some of your healthcare up for 6 months or something.
Sure,
there'll be some angle to offset, I'm sure.
Yeah, because they might be living in apartments that are rented as well. Yeah, there's probably a lot of stuff, honestly. And I think that this is a company that has enough money that that's pretty irrelevant to them, and they probably just want out because they don't want to have to fuck around with, you know, dealing with this any longer. And it's like, I don't know how to say this. LCS clearly isn't going anywhere, guys. Like,
yes,
you know, it's not. Riot isn't making, you know, Riot promised to make a bunch of digital goods to cut in revenue for the teams. Where's that? I haven't heard anything about that in a real long time. There were no details at the time. There's no details now. Like, it doesn't seem like Riot actually gives a fuck about the teams. So why stick around? Is there any hope for Riot to make World's top 8 double a limb? No.
I mean, in theory, there's hope. I just don't think it'll happen. So
yeah,
you can hope though.
I mean, it happened in MSI, so it happened in all the regional playoffs. We can hope, I guess.
The problem is, believe it or not, Monty, This is like a weird angle, but I think it's accurate. I actually think Faker winning Worlds probably does make it less likely they do it, though, because it's such a good storyline for them. Like, in theory, this is the best storyline they can have happen, Monty, so why would they want the double limb, you know what I mean? I actually feel like, low-key, the best thing that would have happened is, like, a shit, boring final that, like, was normal teams, and then maybe you might have had pressure because MSI was so good, but sadly, part of me feels like eventually they'll do double limb. I just don't think it'll be. I think it'll be, like, in 2 years from now. That's my prediction.
Yeah, it'll probably be a bit. What's the best and worst lineup, including coaches, you could make with the current roster of league free agents? Oh man, we're not going to do the best. There's too many. Yeah. There's too many. Let's do a roster we would like.
Let me spin it. I'll ask you a question. What is it? Yeah, what is a roster of players that you would like to see that you haven't seen before? Is there some like combo you've always wanted to see, or something you think would be fascinating?
Well, I think that, like we talked about earlier, you know, Keen and Kanavi going to the existing Gen G lineup of Chovy, Delight, and Pays would be pretty interesting.
That's a pretty insane lineup on paper, isn't it? Yeah,
that'd be pretty fun. I could see if KT had money to spend and they wanted to pick up, like, you know, Zeus in the top lane with the current lineup that they have, that could be really fun as well. Like, what if KT was like Zeus, Canyon, BDD, aiming Lehens? That sounds pretty fucking great.
All I'm going to say is Scout's contract ends.
Ah, yeah, Scout would be great too.
21st, there you go. So Scout on a Korean team, I'd love to see that.
Scout
Put him
Canyon.
on an LCK team.
Scout Canyon, let's go. That'd be fun as fuck.
Scout Canyon.
Scout Canyon. Yeah, that's a good one. Totally free agents. Scout, Canyon, Zeus, Keria, Deft. There you go. Those are all free agents.
Pretty good. Pretty good lineup.
There was a poll with over 90,000 votes that asked if you would never play either video games or sports. 58% chose sports. So basically, you have to choose what you're never going to play again, sports or video games. Okay. Historically, parents have said video games bring no value, are not good for you, and not to play too much. How much truth is in their points, and what's your counter argument? So basically, 58% of people chose they would never play sports again, which I would also choose because, frankly, I'm over the best sports days of my life, and I can play video games for a long-ass time in the future. So just in terms of personal enjoyment, I can also, you know, get exercise in ways that aren't doing sports.
Yeah, but that's if you choose to do it. The problem is this, Monty. I do think, especially for young people, sports are the ultimate hack to get exercise. Because I've always found that myself. It's way harder to discipline yourself and go to the gym and do a set of exercise and know you to reach than it is to just play a game. And like, because when you play the game, it is a hack to trick you into giving your effort. Like, you want to get the ball, you want to score, you want to defend. Like, I've always thought for young people, it's actually the best thing you could possibly do.
It's not even just young people. Like, I mean, I would work out a lot less.
In theory.
I would work out a lot less if I wasn't actively doing Muay Thai, because it's a sport that I engage in, you know what I mean? And it's certainly way more fun than being on the treadmill or like doing squats. So true, but I would still pick, if I had to choose, I would still pick video games, or I would still, you know, choose sports to never play again. And I think that's I don't know, seems like that's a pretty normal response, I guess.
Also, by the way, someone in chat did go like, yeah, but sports can fuck you up. Like, spoiler, any of you in Twitch chat are beyond fucked up by video games to a degree that, like, you probably actually have a sexual identity based on anime. So, like, enough said, you know. I feel like there's psychological damage as well as physical, guy in Twitch chat, you know. I'm just saying. I'd rather have, like, you know, a slightly dodgy like ACL than that, you know. But
yeah, Thorin and I are two 40-year-old guys talking about 19-year-olds playing video games. Like, yeah, we're fucked up by video games.
We are. I always make a joke, dude, like unironically, because back in the day, this is true. I used to be a Quake player, and when I would play Counter-Strike at the early lands, I hated it because it was like a noob game. And I used to say, this is shit, can't we play Quake? And then I always say, and then the rest is history. And now, like, here I am still doing Counter-Strike in like 2023, like 22 years later. It's like, fucking hell. Like, so yeah, that's how out of control shit can get. Basically, Counter-Strike, not even once, my commercial on TV, like scaring kids straight.
Is Caster Jun the GOAT caster of esports? I mean,
Let me just answer that first, Monty. You can answer after, but here's what I'm going to say. No, because I don't know what he's fucking saying. So how could I possibly even consider him for a role in which exactly what he's saying is the only thing I'm judging him off? You utter cretin beyond plebs. Now go ahead and say why he is, Monty. Go on. If you could just say that.
No, what I will say is he's the most experienced. What is impressive about Caster Jun is because he started in the late 90s and he's been active for like 25 years now.
He's bonkers, isn't it? Yeah.
So when we compare just his broadcast hours, the number of hours he spent on broadcast between Brood War and League of Legends, this is not an exaggeration. He probably has 4 times the broadcast hours as the next most experienced caster in the entire world in any language.
Sure.
So is he
also, you know this, Monty, but a lot of fans won't. A lot of those guys like him don't only do like LCK. They do a bunch of other fucking Korean esports as well sometimes, like on the side. Like, you know, they work like it's the same with that woman. I forget her name. You know, the really famous stage host.
Yeah.
Dude, I follow her on Instagram. She's never not working. She's probably doing events all the time.
Yeah. So, you know, basically just because of the number of years that Korea has had professional esports broadcasts on a regular basis, a lot of the Korean casters are just significantly more experienced when it comes to broadcast time. And Caster Jun is one. I would be shocked if there was a person that was even, like I said, anywhere close to his number of broadcast hours.
Even though you might appreciate him, I will at some point lovingly make a skit where I'm just going to do my impression of what he does. And just to make you all look so stupid, like, I'm going to do all that shit. I'll do like a full SNL type skit where I'm that fucking Adam Sandiford or whatever. I'm just going to do like my shit version of Caster Jun intro. And then the joke is, even though you all like, I'm going to make the whole joke even like a fucking skit, Monty, where it's like, what did he say? I don't know, but it's hype in it. It's like, it's all Western pleb fans are just raining all the fucking love on this guy. Because no one knows what he's saying. We don't know Korean, guys. Like, I have no clue what he's saying. It might be good, it might be shit. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
What is a story about your favorite actor director that encapsulates their persona perfectly? I don't know if I have any of these.
About a caster or a player? Did he say?
No, an actor or director that encapsulates their persona perfectly.
So the persona part's what's throwing me though, because how do I know who they are as people? You know what I mean? Like if there's anything,
that's what's throwing
surely
me.
an actor's the person I know the least about who they are. Their job's actor, isn't it? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a hard one, isn't it? That's a hard one.
That's, by the way, that's exactly what made the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial so compelling, is because they're both actors, and it was fucking like, it's very it's a surreal experience to see like that going on in a courtroom where they're both trying to outact each other.
I still think the funniest part about that is just that thing about the mega pipe.
The mega pipe fucking cracks me up.
I know, but what I love about that so much is like, obviously a pint can only be a pint. It's a measure of it's a unit of measure, but they made it like it's just a giant glass essentially, not a pint, is it? Like it's a mega pint. Like what are you talking about? How can it be a mega? But it that was straight fire. The memes that came out of it alone were worth it.
The memes were so fucking funny, and dude, it's just Johnny Depp is such a good actor too, because the way he reacts is just so fucking funny to a lot of these questions, including the mega pint one where he just like leans in, he's like, a mega pint. It's so good. With Riot reversing mythic items, adding another one to the count, how many times has Riot actually admitted they were wrong about something? They're not wrong.
They wrong about jungle 17 times in a row. So I don't know at this point in time. Inadvertently, they admit it.
Has Riot ever been wrong? Really, Riot is just they're if they were to stay the same, if the game were to stay the same, they wouldn't be on the cutting edge of gameplay any longer. It's really their innovation that's driving them, right? And because they invented esports, they've innovated absolutely everything in the space, and they've actually discovered these new formats now. I know it's weird because like Swiss format has existed in many other, not even esports, for a really long time, but it's really great that they invented it this year and then decided it was great.
This is where I'm actually not being subtle enough myself, Monty. If I actually did want to respond the best possible way to that memeable shit where I said I am esports, I should have just done a joke thing where I leaked like a court document where it's like Mark Merrill and like Brian, whatever his name, just like demanding I no longer refer to myself as esports, which was their creation from 2000. I should have done like the whole legal verbiage. It would be great if you did it right. Yeah.
Letter.
If you did it exactly, if you did it right, it would actually be straight fire humor, wouldn't it? I don't know.
Esports was a creation of Riot Games and is currently trademarked. Considering Faker's now at his 4th World Championship win over a decade, how long do you think he has left in him, or should he have retired already? And if so, when?
Even though, because he's won, everyone's going to go, well, of course you shouldn't retire. I think you could make a case
he can retire
that
now.
Like he could have retired 2 or 3 years ago, and I think it would have been fine. He's accomplished everything already. He's had a fabulous career. And as we're saying, you could actually argue, by the way, that if here's the angle no one thinks of. Here's the counterfactual that the fan won't think of if they're a T1 fan. Dude, you do know if Faker is just the coach of T1 for the last 3 years, and then like for real trophies the mid laner, maybe they just win everything.
Yeah,
maybe that's
true.
actually like the secret combo that just unlocks like everything in the. Maybe then suddenly trophy levels is shit up. Who knows, right? Like I think I think essentially he already. I won't say he outstayed his welcome, but he already did everything he needed to do. Faker. It's cool that he stole one on the way out the door, but like, it's not even necessary he plays another game ever, in my opinion. It's cool if he does. If he doesn't, fair play too. Both are good.
I think that his role as basically the de facto coach of T1 had an insane effect on his teammates. So the question is, can he actually impart the current macro knowledge that he has to somebody else to make those in-game shot calls? That's the big question mark. Or do they actually need him in the game to do that? Final question. How does Faker, who hasn't been the main carry of his team for a long time, but has great longevity and amount of trophies, stack against players like Flash, who has dominated in a 1v1 game, and Simple, who has always been the carry of his team, stack in the contention for the GOAT esports player overall? That's a good question.
I mean, I do think that's why, for example, I probably would just default to Flash being the greatest of all time in any esport. It's because here's the thing, Monty, and that guy nailed it with his setup there. Like we talked about, in the finals, Faker wasn't the best player in the finals. He wasn't even close. No. He didn't need to be. He was able to just literally bing chill and win the game. In a 1v1 game, spoiler, you almost have to always be the best one. It's just you against the other guy. So it's true, they can obviously int the game too. But like the reason why what Flash did to me is impossible. Like, for example, that 1 year, the 2010 year, Monty, where he just made all 6 of the finals. Like, you can't do that. That's impossible. Like, I don't think people understand that is actually impossible. Like that like beggars belief. Like, so to me, that's why to me Flash is the greatest ever. Simple's pretty good too, because Simple, like you say, it was like the hard carry for like 6 years or something. It's crazy. Like even fucking Faker didn't hard carry that long, guys. He carried for like what 3-4 years. Like that's pretty good. So to me, like it's a much more interesting discussion than people realize. Like people who do the whole like it's just rings so he wins. Like I don't know about that.
Flash's career, unfortunately, kind of got fucked up by the release of StarCraft 2 as well.
I don't know. He could have won more. Yeah, maybe if the game kept going for 5 years, maybe he wins like 10 titles or something. Who knows, right?
Yeah, because I think that the transition to StarCraft 2, which is a very different game, obviously it split up a bunch of the pro players. It's like some were still playing Brood War, some were still playing StarCraft 2, so the competition wasn't as fierce at that point in time because a lot of players were trying to make transitions into the new title. And had StarCraft 2 not come out and we had just had only Brood War, that was like the big exciting thing still for the next 5 years, we would think about Flash, I think, in a different light. But also people just don't understand, I think, Flash's level of dominance. It was insane how good he was. He had by far the longest, he had by far the greatest longevity of any of the Bonjois, who most of which had much shorter periods of dominance than he did. Like some of them had like a year of dominance. He had like a lot of years.
The real problem is though, people who don't follow CS just don't understand how like individually dominant Simple was. Like basically, if you were an old school fan of League, right? take Faker in season 3, how he gapped everyone. Or if you're a modern day fan, take people like Knight and Ruler when they were the absolute best this year, Chovy. Imagine doing that, but for like 6 straight years. And imagine like a bad year is like you're like the 3rd best player in the world. Because that's like what Simple did in CSGO, basically. So like, I do think like, because that's why I said like, to me, the amazing thing about the Faker one is that he transitioned to being a different type of player later. Simple's still trying to do it as like the #1 guy. That's the, and last year, people don't know, last year he was the player of the year in 2022. So like, I think his longevity dwarfs anything everyone's done in esports for me personally. It's just impossible to be that good for that long. It is Michael Jordan-esque where you really just are the best player every single year.
All right. That's questions done for this week, guys. Thank you very much for supporting us through our Discord subscriptions, and that's where you can get it. If you would like to ask questions in future weeks, we will not be having a show next week, guys, but for the rest of the offseason, we'll be here talking about all of the roster stuff that's going on. Probably, as Thorin said, throw in some historic context pieces, that format video. And frankly, there's just not going to be a long offseason this year, guys, because Worlds ended like 3 weeks later than normal thanks to the fucking Asian games. You know what I mean? So it has been, we're going to have a short offseason because we assume, of course, Riot hasn't announced this yet because we can't know things too far in advance to plan. But usually they started mid-January with the new season. So we'll assume that everything will kick off and then we'll be back to our full slate of LFN shows, including all of our regional shows at that time. And Power Spike will be happening in the next couple days as well. So if you guys have been looking forward to that, and Power Spike will then go on break until the start of the next season. So thank you guys. If you want more LFN content during this offseason, keep tuned to Summoning Insight. Go watch the Culture channel or the basketball show on the Sports channel or the Counter-Strike shows. Those are all going to continue to be rolling. So we'll see you then.